Hello, everyone. It is Saturday, the 4th of November, 2023. I already did a video this morning. It's a twofer. It's a 2-for-1. Lucky you. I'm just kidding. I did get a lot done today, though. I did go to the gym and I worked out. So there's that. Upper body. I walked the dogs. 2 walks, 2 long walks. No, wrong. 1 long walk, 1 shorter walk. Because Ranger was misbehaving, and so I just wasn't having it. So we just left early. He's a husky, and he's 2.5 years old. So he just loves doing his own thing, and he's wild and an escape artist. And anyway, it is what it is. I wanted to show because I wanted to look it up and just show you, because I was talking in my earlier video about the fact that I've done the Law of Armed Conflict course as an officer in the infantry in the PPCLI. And this is as far back as 2008 is when I completed this course. And so many years ago, just to age myself. Oh man. And then I wanted to continue on, obviously, with what I was talking about this morning, because there's a lot more interesting videos that have come out since then that I've seen. And I really think that it's important to keep talking about this. And just like I was very passionate about talking about the mandates and the lockdowns and the therapeutics and oh my goodness, and the Russia-Ukraine war, the Afghanistan pullout, like just sharing truth about so many things repeatedly, consistently. I'm doing the same for this. And I also predicted this many times, and several other people have as well. And I wanted to add this. This was something I was going to share this like so many times, and I just kept on forgetting. Okay, so this is the title of this is U.S. General Admits Israel is Starving Out Gaza on CNN. I've already talked to you too about General Flynn talking about there being bribed, unfortunately, pedophiles within certain departments and organizations, like certain leaders that have been corrupted and are just doing what they're told and spewing garbage and lies.
And listen, I think this is going to happen more and more right now, where you just can't hide the story anymore. You can't BS anymore.
Well, that's what Mehdi Hassan found out, huh?
Yeah. So CNN anchor disavows the intent of Israeli war crimes in Gaza after a retired U.S. general says the quiet part out loud. Watch this. He's like, in real time, he's discovering this and speaking.
But does that mean, does that mean starve the Palestinian people, continue to, because they will be so hungry and will be so desperate for water and medicine that then they will give up Hamas?
It sounds callous, but I mean, this is a war.
Yeah. That is that's war crimes, and that's crimes against humanity. And as someone who, I can attest to that. And I didn't get less educated on law of armed conflict or any of this other stuff since 2008. In fact, I've got a lot more educated and became an expert on it afterwards, to the point where I was even asked to go to the special forces and do the selection process and everything first. But I was asked to go and apply because of my qualifications and my expertise and my reputation. It was a good reputation. I guess it depends on who you talk to, because I was an officer, so there's always going to be people that friggin' hate officers, no matter what you do or say or anything like that. Just because like sometimes we say we give orders that like can be annoying, and if they're not unlawful or unethical or illegal, you know what I mean, like you technically have to follow them. And so I followed a lot of stupid orders too, and I've had good bosses and bad bosses, and I've had bosses where people loved, and I didn't like so much, and I've had bosses that people hated, and they had no idea the amount of work and dedication, the people that they hated the most, like how much they actually worked for them behind closed doors that they'll never know anyway. And so and really like fought for their troops and stuff like that more than they'll ever know. So
you know why this? Okay, let me tell you something.
Can we stop? Can we let that sink in?
No,
it sounds callous.
Okay,
this is a war.
I don't know how long. Since
out
I was
loud.
Since I was a kid, so I don't know how many years. I've never, because I especially didn't want to know anything about this. I saw nothing to help me about knowing anything about this. The only reason people are starting to see it now is because what that guy said, we just got done hearing how evil Russia is.
Mm-hmm.
Russia said they can't have NATO on their border. They need a buffer zone. All of a sudden, well, that's ridiculous. Why? You don't want us on your border? We're just the only country that's dropped nuclear bombs before. And Israel's demanding the same stuff Russia wants this whole time.
Yeah.
I had forgotten about it because I've just been hearing about every other thing for 20 years. But we just came fresh off of not only saluting Nazis live in person, to say Russia goes after civilians and kills civilians. The whiplash of that is that it's too much even for like a normie dullard. That's too much whiplash.
Yeah, and I think they don't even hide it now. They just justify it. But I want to play this.
I'm a dullard, by the way. It's too much for me.
I want to play this again too as well, because you can see this anchor. He's like he's figuring out this in his head, and he's speaking this. And I was wondering if after he said this, goes, did I just say that out loud?
It sounds harsh, but
I might not be an anchor anymore.
I thought those were crimes that we got to bring Putin to court for, because he deported children out of Donbass, which is a war crime. He actually rescued children from there. And he just said starving the entire population.
Watch this one more time. He's saying this as he's discovering this in his head.
But does that mean, does that mean starve the Palestinian people, continue to, because they will be so hungry and will be so desperate for water and medicine that then they will give up Hamas?
It sounds callous, but I mean, this is a war.
Wow. Isn't that collective punishment? Isn't that?
Sounds callous, but this is a war. It doesn't matter. Those are actually war crimes. You cannot do that to civilians in any theater of war. And as someone who is deployed to war in a combat zone, and even have lost people even recently to suicide and stuff like that because of wars. I think I can confirm this, and I was an officer. Like I'll reiterate that as well. So more certifications and qualifications that were needed on the ground to make sure that we didn't commit crimes against humanity. And the fucking hypocrisy, man. Oh!
That illegal. Well, Mark Lamont Hill, remember him? He got put in the penalty box, right?
I know
for saying
Mark
some
Lamont
stuff.
Hill. He used to do my own podcast with me, Sherrod.
He puts every interviewer to shame by forcing the Israeli former foreign minister to admit that Israel is deliberately starving and bombing a captive civilian population to get what they want. A war crime. Not one British journalist has done this. Watch this.
Wow.
This is just beautiful here.
He said that the humanitarian situation, quote, will only deteriorate exponentially, and that crucial life-saving supplies, including fuel, food, and water, must be allowed into Gaza. So the UN is saying you must do this. You are saying you're not going to do this. How do you?
No, we're not saying that.
He's saying doing it immediately. What I'm saying is what you're doing.
No.
He's saying doing it immediately.
I got you. I'll tell you exactly what we're saying. I'm saying we will do everything for the Gazan people.
Mark Lamont Hill.
Once and now, we demand immediate surrender, unconditional surrender of Hamas. If Hamas people come out with their hands up and clear their weapons, believe me, everything will be restored to Gaza. It is Hamas in Hamas.
I don't know if they even say it, but again, like the leaders of Hamas, and again, Hamas was attempting to be a legitimate, and was close to being a legitimate government organization in the 90s and beyond. And there was conflict and turmoil from within, and people that were implanted to cause chaos and destruction from within, because there were other political organizations and parties that wanted to be the ones to make sure that they were the ones that were voted in. And Mahmoud Abbas, since 2005, he's been the leader of Palestine, and corrupted, and taking bribes and stuff like that, and he doesn't care about what's going on there, right? He's another puppet, figurehead, whatever you want to call it, that is assisting and enabling these false flag operations and getting really, really rich in the process. And it just, I don't understand how people don't see this for what it is. I really don't.
Hamas hands.
Okay, now I understand. Thank you for clarifying that.
And
sir.
99% of people in Canada, just like Jeremy McKenzie and Greg Wycliffe were saying as well, they don't understand they don't know what they're talking about.
I think we're actually on the same page here. You're saying that once Hamas leaves, you'll grant the Gazan people food, shelter, fuel, electricity, hospitals, schooling. And if they don't, and if Hamas doesn't leave, then they'll continue to starve and die in hospitals. You are defining for the international community right now collective punishment. You're saying until Hamas acts differently.
See, this guy I respect so much, honestly. Like, he was a really good interviewer, like really good.
2 million people in Gaza are going to be treated this way. And once Hamas acts differently, these 2 million people in Gaza will be treated better. That is exactly what collective punishment is. You're holding them accountable for the actions of others. That is the definition, the textbook definition of collective punishment, sir. Now, you may accept that that's what you want to do, but this is absolutely a contravention of international law.
Well, I'll tell you exactly. No, if we pushed it to the wall.
And this guy's trained to block and deflect and all that stuff and sound like smart and blah blah blah. But like this other guy is so good. Like he's got him unsettled. He's like, oh.
We're not pushing them to the wall. We want to open a humanitarian corridor so they can leave.
No, they
But if
don't.
Hamas,
So that who
if
can leave?
Hamas,
So that who can leave? Citizens? You're saying civilians can leave, but only the Rafah border, correct?
at this point, yes.
So they can't come.
Because where else?
Your country. They can come into Israel.
I'm telling you one more thing I want to say.
No, but I want you to address that point. Don't just smile, sir. Respectfully, you're saying you're making a corridor. They can go to Egypt.
This moron is laughing because he knows how ridiculous he sounds now, right? Like he has literally embarrassed this guy so much, and I know that this guy's group specifically, they're gonna hate that, right? Because these guys actually are pretty discriminatory and racist against not only other religions but other skin colors and stuff like that as well. I'm not saying him specifically, but I'm saying the specific extremists like Netanyahu and these people that like are dictating these false flag events and Fauci and that's why they don't generally debate people either or go on these shows and talk to people that are significantly more educated. Clearly,
you say you want to save them, but they can't come in.
First of all, I'm not smiling. I'm crying in my.
This is gonna not. I don't know that Israel's gonna pull this one off this time. I gotta tell you because it's kind of now that woke is the crypto of woke has collapsed. That coalition is breaking apart. Like this stuff's gonna come out. Everybody spent the last 7 years being real self-righteous about all kinds of stuff, and now we're whiplash. Like something out of a movie. Well, when you give me Zorro, I'll stop killing. When the terrorist Zorro comes out, I'll stop starving the town. There's no way to spin this. There's just no way to spin this.
Yeah, listen, I have a lot of conversations right now. I told you I'm from Boca Raton, Florida, and I grew up in a predominantly Jewish
Boca Raton's
area.
Full of assholes, you know that.
Well, yeah, but I even have Jewish friends too as well. They're texting me right now as they're watching the show. I got a couple lunch dates coming up.
Retired dentists from Manalapan.
So we have a lot of time. I mean, it's really. I mean, at this point, I think they've painted themselves into a corner.
Is anybody going to say this? Here's what I want to hear, and I haven't heard it yet.
Yeah.
Again, because I think it's inflammatory what I've been saying. That Gaza's a concentration camp. That's an inflammatory thing to say. Not one person goes, "Come on, Kurt." No, it's not. Not one person says that.
They don't deny it. They justify it. And that's the difference. And that's the craziness of it.
It really sticks out. And then this guy.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? Like, where is this okay in the world?
Yeah.
I mean, this is wild. All these people that were crying about Trump's border wall are now, I better get with this. Yeah. Okay. I'm saying Sarah Silverman, obviously. But
Dan,
all the liberals, the border wall. Yeah. That's fascism. You're cool with this? Wow.
Yeah. Well, we didn't get Amy Schumer. Is it Amy Schumer?
I wouldn't even.
We didn't even get
she didn't know nothing. Chuck Schumer's her uncle. Her uncle's Chuck Schumer.
All right. Dan, what do you got to say about this so far?
I mean, it's just incredible seeing it all come out. It's just like the truth is coming out. The whole, farce of Israel is. Remember the only democracy in the Middle East? What happened to that? I mean, that's
my favorite.
The Overton window, the Overton window is just like so far shifted. Israel is going to lose. I mean, to me, these kinds of laws, it's passing. They can just imprison anyone for undermining state morale. Look, fascism is not a sign of strength. It's a sign of weakness of a regime. Look at all the stuff Ukraine has done. Does Ukraine look very strong right now? It's like there's a countdown, frankly, on.
Oh, I shared a video. I don't know if you'll even be able to see it. The Zelensky. It was a collage or a compilation of all the. Oh, here it is. There you go. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Zelensky. Terrible dance moves. I can do better. I am from Quebec, though, and we're more Latin with our movements, our hip movements and stuff like that. You have to have the hips in it. And you have to know how to move the hips. Well, now, so this is JP Sears. Posted 3 hours ago, Israel versus Palestine, what they don't want you to know. I would love to do an interview with him as well.
I think we're on the brink of World War III. I'm very happy for the military-industrial complex. This is great for them. They deserve it. A lot of people are going to die. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the whole Israel versus Palestine thing? I'm pro-war. I'm just pro-war. That's what's most important to me. What about you? I'm anti-peace. Though different, I can empathize with your perspective. How do you think we got here? Where a month ago, none of us were emotionally enraged into supporting an all-out Israel versus Palestine war, and now all of a sudden we're all emotionally impassioned into believing this war must happen. Well, I think the reason why I'm so pro-war all of a sudden is because I've effectively been manipulated by weaponized morality via the media. Well, it started with Hamas's evil terrorist attack on innocent Israeli civilians on October 7th. Because that's pure evil, I'm automatically on board with retribution against them at all costs. And now the retribution against them involves thousands of Palestinian civilians being killed in bombings that are intended for Hamas, which I'm totally on board with because of what Hamas did on October 7th. Me too. Then there's all the kill the Jew people around the world dedicated to looking like evil idiots. They're totally on board with war because them being on the other side, they want all the Jews eradicated. They probably don't know that they look like little crappy Hitler clones, do they? Not too much self-awareness on their part. But in addition to all the kill the Jew people wanting war, there's people who see them looking like detestable evil idiots, and that makes them want war even more because of how detestable all the kill the Jew people are. I'm now even more anti-peace. Same. And then there's all the devastating things that Israeli government has done to Palestinian people over the last handful of decades. Pretty terrible. So that unto itself causes more people to get on board with this war because they think what the Israeli government has done is pretty unjust. There's just no justice and peace. Then there's all the imbeciles on U.S. college campuses openly supporting Hamas, saying that Israeli citizens deserved what Hamas did to them. And because there's such a vile group of people openly supporting evil terrorists, that makes it that much easier for people on the other side to slide down the slope of being super on board with this war, without really thinking about it, because they're so against what these pro-Hamas college campus idiots stand for. College is always money well spent. So at this point, no matter which side you're on, we all want war. It's the only answer. Yeah, we all do want war all of a sudden, but how could you not when the media is feeding us all these things that make us passionately certain that war is super justified? Yeah, so what's important to not think about is how the media might be playing us to be super supportive for war. What do you mean? The media is just telling us what's going on. It just so happens that hearing what they tell us has swayed us all to want an incredibly deadly thing that none of us genuinely wanted even a month ago. Yeah. Do you remember how all throughout COVID, you saw the media as nothing but a propaganda arm influencing people to support masking, lockdowns, jabs, and the abolishing of constitutional rights? Dude, I didn't trust a thing they told me about what was going on. Right. And have you ever thought about why you're now trusting what the media is telling you about what's going on with Palestine and Israel? No, I never have thought about that. And I don't think I will. Which is great. You're not supposed to. And do you think the media has changed since COVID? Well, I mean, I'm the one sort of believing them now and going along with how they want me to be, pro-war. So they must have changed and become a little more honest, right? Yeah, that's probably it. And the other thing not to consider is why all of us who are super pro-war all of a sudden are being played into supporting this war. What shouldn't I consider about that?
He's serious. He's pretty jacked. Like, he's really healthy. He works out. I don't know if he competes or not in bodybuilding or anything like that, but he could if he wanted to, and like especially in physique, and especially natty. Like, yeah, if he was natural, he would like really like clean up. I've been a coach for bodybuilders men and women, and for natural and open competitions, and so, and for transformations as well that were for natural clients. And so I can confirm that there's absolutely a difference between natural and performance enhanced individuals. And that's so I just wanted to say, like, I'm surprised that there's not more, and I'm disappointed that there's not more bodybuilders that speak out on what's going on and or address this in their podcasts or their social media platforms more. And people are just like, oh, it's not part of their job, it's not part of what they do, and they're gonna like lose. Okay, like that's your opinion, but when you have like when you have the platform in place where you can, you know, like not use it to completely, like not like my page where it's like basically just like all politics essentially, but like with bodybuilders, if you know, have like maybe like at least let it be known on your page, like even if it was just like one time, like just post a friggin' story that's like not even a minute and just say like what your feedback is and thoughts are on current events. Like it would help significantly. And I've tried to share this information with people that I know, and or in the bodybuilding communities with people that have really big platforms. And I've put myself out there to try to get on these, like to even get on their podcasts and be the one that discuss key events and political events or geopolitical events, whatever you want to call it. And then of course, like the other stuff that I discussed, which is more conspiratorial in nature, but where I show irrefutable proof. And people are not biting, and it's just like it's just the amount of cowardice in the bodybuilding community. It just astounds me, especially Canadian bodybuilders, and it's really annoying. Like Steve Kuplo, he's like, and it doesn't surprise me. He's like an ex-fighter as well as a bodybuilder, and so like he feels more compelled to speak out on this stuff. And yeah, and I can't even think of any others. Like you've got friggin' Dwayne The Rock Johnson, that's completely on the other opposite side, and he's the one that's like one of the mouthpieces to propagate the bullshit and the propaganda and the psyops. And I don't know, it's just a shame. Like I don't want to like publicly name people, but I've personally reached out to people and we've had conversations in dialogue, and I've shared information, but it's just like, oh, this is 2 hours long. But the thing is, like, it's annoying when, and I'm going on all these tangents, but like there's so many people now that are addicted to porn and that are addicted to video games. And by the way, people can tell, like I can tell. It's very obvious. Like, you know, when you can tell that someone's like a drug addict or an alcoholic or like a food addict, and or like there's ways that you can tell when someone's a porn addict, and there's ways that you can tell someone's a video game addict. And it's even like body features that are changed significantly, and it's not even, and people are not aware of it. And it's not attractive. And I'm going on all these tangents, but I just really wish that there could be more consideration paid for current events and how they're drastically mitigated by knowing about past events and being brave enough and courageous enough to using your platform to discuss these events, so that your platform can not only just be about like bodybuilding in this specific case, but it can also be about bringing truth and facts into a country where there won't necessarily be bodybuilding competitions when you're drafted.
Well, just 2 weeks before the October 7th Hamas attack, Israeli President Netanyahu showed the UN Assembly a new map of the Middle East, and it had no Palestine on it. And given the fact that the Israeli government originally funded Hamas, you have to wonder if their plan was to get Hamas to attack them in an evil, unforgivable way, which then justifies a massive retaliation of force to literally wipe Palestine off the map. The media hasn't told me much about that, so you're probably just an anti-Semite. Exactly, that's the new term meant to intimidate people from remembering their humanity and realizing they might be getting played by the globalists into supporting this war. Got me to say it. And then you can further consider how the U.S. is funding both sides of the war, giving $6 billion to give to Iran, to give to Hamas, and we're sending billions to Israel to aid in their military effort. Couldn't be about oil. I'm sure it's not. So when you consider these facts, you might start to...
I've actually shared that as well too, where there's like major oil reserves opportunities in off the coast of Palestine for billions and billions of dollars worth of oil resources. And so this is another reason why people are thinking about that being a possibility, because when we've got ourselves into other wars, like it did unfortunately involve the exploitation of petroleum and other natural resources. And there are people that are exploiting Canadians as well, exploiting our natural resources and petroleum. And what pisses me off about what's going on with Alberta, and people trying to say that they want to like not give or contribute to the Canadian pension plan or anything like that, is that petroleum is the second most abundant fluid in the world. I've already shared this before. It's irrefutable evidence. And it can be drilled and accessed in multiple different locations, right? It just depends on if you have access to like the drilling capabilities and areas where this naturally occurring abundant fluid is where it is. And so we either need to discuss this within Canada and have it where other provinces and territories are able to also drill and import and export oil, petroleum specifically, or if Alberta is going to be the only province where we're allowing this to happen, essentially, then they can't be so stringent with what they do with it, right? Because if they're the only province out of the entire country that has the ability to, import and export our major resource within Canada for economics, like a surplus or our economy to build it up, then it's really selfish of this moron. In the premier now is Danielle Smith, I believe her name is. And there's been a lot of other questionable policies she's implemented and things that she's backed and did a 180 on. And so I personally don't trust her either moving forward, and especially after this. And I think it's just very selfish and short-sighted and ignorant. And anyways, I'm going on all these tangents.
To believe that war was the goal all along meant to accomplish a further goal that's not being honestly shared by certain governments. And they're using the media to prey on people's morality that just wants evil abolished and justice for good in order to get them to be supportive for this war. So you're saying the reason why I might be so pro-war no matter what side I'm on is because I've been played by the media to be obedient with her nefarious agenda? No, of course not. What I'm saying is if you're a good person, you better forget your humanity and be all out supportive for this war. Okay, I am. I support it. Thank you for standing with the current thing. You're a good little sheep. Thank you. You're welcome. I believe health equals.
So that was really interesting. And I really like what he does and says and what he stands for. And I want to just make sure I got that out of the way. Before I get into a video that I think is very interesting. Not the first time I've shared. Likely will not be the last.
Lexi, tell us something in.
But there's always subtle differences, and this one was posted just 5 hours ago. Top 20 proofs by Eric Dubay that the Earth is not a globe. I believe it is for this one. And this is the channel. Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app.
Interesting. Okay. The Earth is flat, and a witch stole his pants.
Wake up. Send this message to Prince Constantine.
Flat Earth has long been denigrated, derided, and disparaged as being the most crackpot of all conspiracy theories, marginalized, mocked, and ridiculed for centuries as being an ignorant, ancient, unscientific worldview. But the facts of the matter are far from what you have been told. When thoroughly examined and diligently researched with an open mind, any skeptical, critical thinker will find it is actually the tilting, wobbling, spinning spaceball Earth promoted by NASA and taught in schools that is truly ridiculous and unscientific.
Hey man, you looking fine.
This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is.
Aristotle said, "Nothing is more challenging than the ability to study, debate, and think through a concept without immediately accepting or rejecting it. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." And F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote, "The truest sign of intelligence is the ability to entertain two contradictory ideas simultaneously." In other words, one of the truest marks of intelligence is being able to consider opposite ideas without immediately accepting or rejecting one of them. Every issue has at least two sides, usually three sides or more. And if you've only researched or thought about one side of an issue and just completely rejected the other sides without any consideration, that is the highest form of willful ignorance. In my experience, this is the main dividing factor between the two types of people you come across when discussing flat Earth or other conspiracy type subjects. In school, as children, we're presented with the globe heliocentric model and told it is absolutely true and correct and proven beyond any shadow of a doubt, and everyone has known it for hundreds or thousands of years, and only your stupid, ignorant, ancient ancestors believed that the Earth was a flat, motionless plane. So, once you hear that, the vast majority of students will never consider that there could possibly be any other side to this story, because we've been told there isn't. But in reality, there are other models of the Earth. The globe is not the only possible shape of the Earth that people have believed in or found evidence for. For thousands of years, people had plenty of evidence for and believed in a level stationary plane Earth. So there are two sides to this story. And in fact, there's more. Some people believe in a concave Earth. Rather than a convex sphere, they believe you're living inside a sphere. So there's three sides of the story now. And if you want to do your due diligence and actually find the truth, instead of just being willfully ignorant and pretending other options don't exist, other evidence isn't out there, the truly intelligent person, the true detective, the one who is going to get to the truth, must examine all sides of the story, must look at all evidence, and do so with an open mind, skeptical, critically thinking, not with a foregone conclusion full of ego, assuming they already know the answer to be whatever they were first told. No, you have to actually do your due diligence and research it. Research everything they say about the globe, everything they say about the flat Earth, everything they say about the concave Earth. Only then can you come to a truly educated and intelligent decision. The vast majority of people in the world have never looked into the evidence for a flat Earth. They were told it is convex, and they believed it. Now that the flat Earth renaissance is kicking off, and people are challenging their friends and family members about their previously held beliefs, there's becoming a clear dividing line between the two types of people out there. The first type is so sure of whatever they were first taught and told and believed that they cannot even for a second hold in their mind the possibility that what they were taught could be wrong. And along with this unearned confidence they have in their ignorance, usually comes quite the ego. People who are able to entertain opposing ideas without immediately accepting or rejecting them do so with a level of egolessness, because they are withholding judgment for days, weeks, months, while they consider opposing ideas. Truly intelligent people need to be able to consider opposing ideas for days, weeks, or months without judging, without making a decision, to be able to adequately consider all the evidence. If you just find the first piece of evidence and immediately make your judgment, how reliable can your judgment be? The top 20 proofs Earth is not a spinning globe. It's just over an hour long. Please do me, yourselves, and the rest of the world a favor, and watch this with an open, skeptical mind. For the first time in your life, consider the possibility that your senses are true, and that your common sense and lived experience that tells you that you're standing upright on a level stationary plane with the sun, moon, and stars revolving over and around you, consider that that could be the reality, that what you experience is real. And do as Aristotle said, and hold two contradictory ideas in your mind simultaneously, without judging them. I guarantee you, if you're able to do that long enough to do your due diligence in researching the flat Earth, you, like every one of us, will become a flat earther. The following are 20 ways anyone can prove for themselves that Earth is a level, stationary plane. 1. Common sense. It cannot be overstated or overemphasized. The most important thing to realize, and most obvious way to know you are not spinning on a ball, is your own common sense and lived experience. You have always and will always experience yourself as living right side up on a motionless earth, with the sun, moon, and stars revolving over and around you. This is common sense, and what everyone in the world personally experiences every day of their lives. We are taught to believe otherwise, however, many things completely contrary to our own common sense and experience from a very early age. We are told that people living down under the spinning ball Earth in Australia are actually living upside down relative to those residing in the Northern Hemisphere, while an invisible force, strong enough to hold people, buildings, and oceans stuck to the underside of a rapidly rotating ball, but weak enough to allow birds, bugs, and planes to take off and fly with ease, keeps Earth's atmosphere spinning in perfect balance and holds everyone firmly to the surface without crushing us. We can clearly see that the horizon is horizontal, but we are told it curves. We can feel that the earth under our feet is motionless, but we are told it moves. We can observe the luminaries revolving around us, but we are told it is us that revolves. It is obvious that stars are stars, but we are told that stars are suns. We can see the sun is bigger than the stars, but we are told stars are bigger than the sun. We can see the sun and moon are the same size, but we are told the sun is 400 times larger. It is obvious that up is up and down is down, but we are told there is no such thing. As stated by flat earth author David Wardlaw Scott, with the modern astronomer, there is theoretically neither up nor down, though his experience belies his assertion every time he looks up to the heavens or down to the ground. Such aberration of intellect is really to be pitied. The 3rd century philosopher Lactantius was similarly perturbed about the idea, stating, "A sphere where people on the other side live with their feet above their heads, where rain, snow, and hail fall upwards, where trees and crops grow upside down, and the sky is lower than the ground? The ancient wonder of the hanging gardens of Babylon dwindle into nothing in comparison to the fields, seas, towns, and mountains that pagan philosophers believe to be hanging from the earth without support. Truly, the idea that people are standing, ships are sailing, and planes are flying upside down on certain parts of Earth, while others are tilted at 90 degrees and all other impossible angles, is utter absurdity and an affront to common sense. In fact, common sense is the first casualty of globe belief. No child or unindoctrinated man would ever conclude or even conceive, if given to their own devices, based on their own personal observations, that Earth was a spinning ball revolving around the sun. When children are indoctrinated from a very early age to abandon their common sense and lived experience of a geocentric plain Earth in favor of this nonsensical heliocentric globe model taught in schools, a schism occurs in their psyche. No longer can they trust their own senses and experience, and instead must trust information completely contrary to it, taught by supposed experts and authority figures who insist their version of reality is correct. When children see that every adult around them believes wholeheartedly in the spinning globe, and hear that only our ignorant, unscientific ancestors believed otherwise, they readily abandon the empirical evidence of their senses and adopt the prevailing nonsensical model. As stated by flat earth author E. Eschini, the one thing the fable of the revolving earth has done, it has shown the terrible power of a lie. A lie has the power to make a man a mental slave, so that he dares not back the evidence of his own senses, to deny the plain and obvious movement of the sun he sees before him. When he feels himself standing on an earth utterly devoid of motion, at the suggestion of someone else, he is prepared to accept that he is spinning furiously round. When he sees a bird flying and gaining over the ground, he is prepared to believe that the ground is really traveling a great number of times faster than the bird. And finally, in order to uphold the imagination of a madman, he is prepared to accuse his maker of forming him a sensiferous lie. The fact of the immobility of the Earth has an immense advantage for the theory of the rotation, in that it can positively be recognized as such, and it can safely be said that if the Earth cannot be seen to move, there are 100 chances in 100 that it does not do so. So trust your eyes and trust your experience. Trust your feeling, trust your intuition. Look out, see the horizon, flat. Feel for yourself. You're not moving. Just sit still. Just sit still for a second. You're not moving. You're not spinning around an axis at 1,000 miles per hour.
You're not.
Rotating around the sun at 67,000 miles per hour. Spiraling around the galaxy at 500,000 miles per hour and shooting off from a Big Bang at 67 million miles per hour. You're not. You're motionless. You're just sitting there. Just sit still. What does that even mean, sit still? You think you could sit still with all those motions? Does it feel like you're moving? Feel that? Same thing you've always felt? Nothing. Ever. Nobody's ever felt movement. Nobody's ever seen the earth move. Nobody's ever seen the earth curve. Maybe you just got fooled by some Masons. Mark Twain said, "It's easier to fool people than to convince them they've been fooled." That's why it's so hard to convince you you've been fooled. You can't possibly believe that you and the rest of the world could have been lied to and deceived by these Masons. The oldest and largest secret society in the world, over 5 million members, all over the world, existing for hundreds of years. But not you, right? They couldn't fool you. Of course you're spinning around. Of course you are. That's what they told you in school. They don't lie to you in school. 2. Fake photographs. One of the main reasons the average person believes the world is a globe is because of the globular Earth images and video footage provided by NASA and other space agencies. Hundreds of such pictures and thousands of videos featuring a globe Earth are freely available on the internet, yet most people never critically examine them with a skeptical eye. From the earliest photographs to the latest live streams, NASA and the world's other space agencies continue to be exposed for their Hollywood-style trickery. When conscientiously compared, contrasted, and investigated for inconsistencies, it turns out every single image and video showing a globular Earth has been manipulated in some way. All globe videos, for example, are achieved using either a fisheye lens to curve the horizon or created completely through CGI technology. One clear instance of the latter is NASA's 1990 time-lapse video of Earth supposedly filmed by their Galileo space telescope from 1.3 million miles away. This video features the Earth globe spinning in space, uncut for 25 hours, and shows the exact same clouds present without ever dissipating, changing shape or location the entire time. In reality, if you watch clouds in the sky for several minutes, 3 things will inevitably happen. The clouds will all move, some will morph, gradually changing shape, and others will dissipate and disappear completely. In NASA's official footage of the spinning ball Earth, however, the entire world's cloud cover doesn't dissipate, morph, or move for 25 hours, which is, of course, impossible, and proof of fakery. A good example of fisheye lens fakery is the famous 2012 GoPro Red Bull jump, where skydiver Felix Baumgartner was lifted to a record-breaking 128,000 feet in a stratospheric balloon, then jumped back to Earth. 7 GoPro cameras on the outside of the craft and strapped to Felix himself recorded the entire ascent and descent. Astute observers will notice that from ground level all the way up to the 24-mile apex, the horizon is significantly curved and remains equally so for the entire ascent. This is because the curve is artificial and being caused by the GoPro camera's standard-issue fisheye lens. Once Felix reaches his peak altitude and the door of his craft opens, an inside camera mounted behind him without a fisheye lens reveals the truth, showing a perfectly flat horizon, still at eye level, 128,000 feet high. As for the hundreds of supposed photographs available of the globe, NASA readily admits that these are composite images and not actual photographs. They claim the composites are made by taking strips of data sent from satellites, spliced together in Photoshop, and colorized for the final creation. NASA's senior program analyst and lead data visualizer, Robert Simon, admitted in an interview that they are photoshopped because they have to be. When compared side by side and viewed with a discerning eye, the inconsistencies become obvious. The coloration of the land and oceans and relative size of the continents drastically changes between images, and they often feature far too little landmass for 50% of a globe. Several of NASA's blue marble Earth images have repeat instances of exact cloud patterns clearly copied and pasted into place. Computer enhancements done on Earth images taken during the Apollo missions also show similar photo trickery. When hues are removed from the black backgrounds and brightness enhanced, distinct rectangular artifacts appear around the globe where they were pasted in, again proving them to be doctored composites. Furthermore, When NASA's Earth pictures are compared with those from the Russians, Chinese, and other space agencies, the differences become evident, and the fact that they are all simply Photoshop images becomes obvious. If NASA and the world's space agencies could provide real, legitimate photographs and videos of a globe, they most certainly would. So the fact that they continue producing and pumping out nothing but fisheye fakery and CGI cartoons is strong evidence that Earth is not what they claim. 3. Water. The natural physics of water are that once contained and undisturbed, the surface will always remain horizontal. This fundamental physical property of water is why it has been used as a leveling tool by builders and engineers for millennia. Whether in a bucket, bathtub, pond, lake, or an ocean, the surface of water at rest always remains flat and doesn't have the ability to show convexity or any shape whatsoever upon its surface. This fact is easily demonstrable and empirically verifiable, but completely at odds with what we are told about the globe. For Earth to be globular and over 70% covered in water, the oceans must be somehow curving around and sticking to all sides of a rapidly spinning ball suspended in space. It is simply impossible to make water behave this way. As anyone can experiment for themselves, bodies of water will not stick to the underside of a ball and cannot show convexity or any other shape upon their surface. Globe defenders will often point to water droplets, meniscus, surface tension, or adhesion, claiming these are examples of water bending or sticking to a surface, which is nothing but a fallacy of false equivalency, as these only happen at a very small scale, the size of a coffee cup. The claim is entire oceans wrapping around and sticking to the underside of a spinning ball, not a water droplet or the meniscus in a glass filled to the brim. NASA has also recently taken to faking CGI water balls using augmented virtual reality technology in an attempt to convince the public that water can behave this way. This kind of demonstration, done in a reference frame inaccessible to 99.99% of the population, however, is unrepeatable by the world's scientists and skeptics, and is therefore not scientific or permissible as proof of anything. First, they claim only massive objects the size of Earth have this attractive property. Then, as evidence, they show a phenomenon allegedly outside of our earthly reference frame. In other words, they are claiming bodies of water can bend around, stick to a ball, and show curvature upon their surface, but only at a scale too big for the public to recreate. Then they are claiming water can ball up and float suspended in air, but only in a reference frame too far for the public to recreate. As for water level, globe defenders have actually attempted to completely redefine the term level just to fit with their dogma. The true definition of level is a flat horizontal plane with no deviation in elevation along its surface. Water always reliably seeks and maintains its own level, and that is why it has been used in spirit levels and construction projects from time immemorial to create perfectly horizontal structures, no matter their size. Globe zealots, however, unsatisfied with this obvious truth and clear definition, have attempted to redefine level to instead mean curved. Their globe-friendly version of level means equal heights around a ball when measured from a central point. The fact of the matter is, however, that nobody has ever reached this hypothetical center point of the hypothetical Earth globe, so their redefined term cannot be tested or falsified. Until that day, rest assured there is good reason we call it sea level and not sea curve. 4. The horizon. The horizon is always perfectly horizontal, 360 degrees around the observer, regardless of altitude. If Earth was actually a globe, no matter how large, as an observer ascended, the horizon would remain fixed in position and fall below the observer the higher climbed. In reality, all amateur balloon, rocket, plane, and drone footage filmed without a fisheye lens at maximum altitudes of over 20 miles high show a completely flat horizon, still rising to eye level. Only in NASA and other space agency footage does the horizon ever curve or appear below the observer's eye level. In the heliocentric model, the horizon is claimed to be the physical curvature of their globe, and the reason boats receding from a shore-bound observer disappear from view. This was actually one of the original alleged globe Earth proofs presented by Aristotle and still parroted by believers today. But by using modern zoom technology, we now know that the horizon is not the physical curvature of a globe, and those boats can be zoomed back into full view. This is because the horizon is not an objective physical phenomenon at all, but rather a subjective optical phenomenon based on an individual observer's perspective. If the horizon was actually the objective physical curvature of a globe, then objects receding beyond it could not be zoomed back into view, and it would remain fixed as an observer ascended. In reality, however, the horizon rises along with the observer, no matter how high, and modern zoom technology can bring objects receding beyond it back into full view. This proves the horizon line is not some objective point of curvature on a convex Earth, but rather the subjective vanishing line of perspective from a given observer's point of view. Quoting Earth Not a Globe by Dr. Samuel Robotham, on the shore near Waterloo, a few miles to the north of Liverpool, a good telescope was fixed at an elevation of 6 feet above the water. It was directed to a large steamer just leaving the River Mersey and sailing out to Dublin. Gradually, the masthead of the receding vessel came nearer to the horizon, until, at length, after more than 4 hours had elapsed, it disappeared. The ordinary rate of sailing of the Dublin steamers was fully 8 miles an hour, so that the vessel would be at least 32 miles distant when the masthead came to the horizon. The 6 feet of elevation of the telescope would require 3 miles to be deducted for convexity, which would leave 29 miles, the square of which, multiplied by 8 inches, gives 560 feet, deducting 80 feet for the height of the main mast, and we find that, according to the doctrine of rotundity, the masthead of the outward-bound steamer should have been 480 feet below the horizon. Many other experiments of this kind have been made upon sea-going steamers, and always with the results entirely incompatible with the theory that the Earth is a globe. 5. Gyroscopes. Gyroscopes are precision instruments consisting of a wheel mounted inside 2 or 3 gimbals, which provide pivoting support and allow the wheel to rotate about a single.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm watching the Olympia bodybuilding at the same time. I've already watched this video multiple times. I am a flat earther. I have been for many, many years. I bought my first flat earth map in 2011, secondhand off of Kijiji when I was in New Brunswick as a course officer and second in command of Alpha Company when I was there. And so yeah, like this stuff I'm tracking already.
Axis. As the entire contraption moves and shifts angles, the gimbals move and shift accordingly, but the inner wheel never changes its angle with respect to its initial reference frame. This unique property is called rigidity in space, meaning the inner wheel maintains its orientation and axis of rotation in relation to space and not to the surface of the Earth. This means that the base of a gyroscope set in motion with its axis in a vertical position, then placed on a table for 6 hours, should rotate 90 degrees with the spinning globe Earth. As the globe turns under the gyroscope for 6 hours, the axis should slowly turn from vertical to horizontal. This experiment has been tested many times with several full-length videos available online, and never does the gyroscope's vertical axis shift whatsoever. If the heliocentric model were true, not only would the gyroscope detect the alleged 1,000-mile-per-hour spin of the globe, but also the 67,000-mile-per-hour revolution around the sun, the entire solar system's 500,000-mile-per-hour spiral around the Milky Way galaxy, and the entire galaxy's multi-million-mile-per-hour journey through the universe. Since these hypothetical motions never register on precision gyroscopes, it is clear that they, just like the spinning ball Earth they're based on, do not exist. Gyroscopes are also the technology behind inertial guidance systems and airplane artificial horizon indicators. When military jets are performing loops, barrel rolls, and other dogfighting maneuvers, the artificial horizon allows pilots to easily see their exact orientation relative to Earth without having to rely on looking out the window. If Earth was truly a sphere, by simply flying level, airplane artificial horizon indicators should show a steady decline unless pilots constantly correct their altitudes downwards so as not to fly straight off into so-called outer space. For example, a pilot traveling 500 miles per hour over a globe Earth 24,900 miles in circumference would have to descend an average of 2,777.
I don't want to be out of line, but I was thinking about Cedric McMillan, who was also a bodybuilder for many years, and he was 44 when he passed away. He had a heart attack in April of 2022, and it's someone who I followed and who I thought he was amazing. He was also like still serving. He was in the military in the USA, and I've often wondered, and I do wish this would be investigated, just to how he passed away, because it was a heart attack. He was inoculated, and it was April of 2022. And it was a roadside accident caused by the heart attack. April 17, 2022.
7 feet, or over half a mile per minute. Otherwise, in 1 hour's time, the plane would be 31.5 miles higher than desired. In fact, if Earth was really a ball, there should be no reason to use rockets for flying into outer space, because simply flying an airplane straight at any altitude for long enough would already inevitably send you there. 6. Compasses. The mariner's compass is another precision instrument which can only work on a level plane Earth, and is an impossible and nonsensical tool for use on a globe. It simultaneously points north and south over a flat surface and must be held flat to work, yet claims to be pinpointing two constantly moving geomagnetic poles at opposite ends of a spinning sphere originating from a hypothetical molten metal core. If compass needles were actually drawn to the north pole of a globe, the opposing south needle would actually be pointing up and off into outer space. Likewise, observers holding a compass in Antarctica would be at the bottom of the ball, so to show north, the needle would have to point down at their feet. If the so-called South Pole in Antarctica were truly the southern pole of a magnet, observers would be able to walk in a circle with their backs to the South Pole and have their compass needles show north being in front of them in every direction. This feat has never and will never be achieved because the so-called South Pole is simply an arbitrary point along the Antarctic ice, marked with a red and white barbershop pole and topped with a little metal ball earth. The actual type of magnetism present on Earth is similar to a ring magnet found in loudspeakers, which have a central north pole, with the opposite south pole being all points along the outer circumference. This perfectly describes the magnetism of our flat Earth, whereas the alleged source of magnetism in the globe model is emitted from a hypothetical molten magnetic core in the center of the ball, which they claim conveniently causes both poles to constantly move and thus forever evade independent verification at their two ceremonial poles. 7. Plain sailing. Ship captains in navigating great distances at sea never need to factor the supposed curvature of the Earth into their calculations. Both plain sailing and great circle sailing, the most popular navigation methods, use plane, not spherical trigonometry, making all mathematical calculations on the assumption that the Earth is perfectly flat. If the Earth were in fact a sphere, such an errant assumption would lead to constantly glaring inaccuracies. Plain sailing has worked perfectly fine in both theory and practice for thousands of years, and plane trigonometry has time and again proven more accurate than spherical trigonometry in determining distances across the oceans. It is so commonly used at sea, navigation in theory and practice states that, in practice, scarcely any other rules are used but those derived from plain sailing. The great and serious objection to plain sailing is that longitude cannot be found by it accurately, although in practice it is more frequently found by it than any other method. So both latitude and longitude are found most often and most accurately by assuming Earth to be flat, more accurately even than assuming the Earth to be spherical. Quoting 100 Proofs Earth is Not a Globe by William Carpenter, "If the Earth were a globe, a small model globe would be the very best, because the truest, thing for the navigator to take to sea with him. But such a thing as that is not known. With such a toy as a guide, the mariner would wreck his ship of a certainty. This is a proof that Earth is not a globe." 8. Construction. Surveyors, engineers, architects, and builders are never required to factor the supposed curvature of the Earth into their projects. Plumb bobs are used to establish plumb vertical datums, with spirit levels then used to establish horizontal datums and lay flat foundations across great expanses. If Earth was actually a globe of given proportions, builders would find themselves constantly deviating from both their established vertical and horizontal datum lines. But in reality, canals, railways, bridges, tunnels, and other large projects are always cut and laid horizontally, often over hundreds of miles, without any allowance for curvature and no deviation from established datums. As stated by surveyor T. Westwood in Earth Review magazine, quote, "In leveling, I work from ordnance marks, or canal levels, to get the height above sea level. The puzzle to me used to be that over several miles, each level was and is treated throughout its whole length as the same level from end to end, not the least allowance being made for curvature." The Suez Canal, which connects the Mediterranean Sea with the Gulf of Suez on the Red Sea, is one clear proof of both the Earth's and water's non-convexity. The canal is 100 miles long and without any locks, so the water within is an uninterrupted continuation of the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. When it was constructed, the Earth's supposed curvature was not taken into account. It was dug along a horizontal datum line 26 feet below sea level, passing through several lakes from one sea to the other, with the datum line and the water's surface running perfectly parallel over the 100 miles. Another good example is the Dunyang-Kunshan Bridge, the longest bridge in the world, just over 102 miles long, which runs parallel to the Yangtze River and connects the Shanghai and Nanjing provinces. This bridge is approximately the same length as the Suez Canal, and was also built without factoring the alleged curvature of the Earth. If Earth was actually a globe 24,900 miles in circumference, spherical trigonometry dictates that the center of both the Suez Canal and the Dunyang-Kunshan Bridge would bulge over 1,666 feet higher than either end. Engineer W. Winkler was published in the Earth Review regarding the Earth's supposed curvature, stating, As an engineer of many years standing, I saw that this absurd allowance is only permitted in school books. No engineer would dream of allowing anything of the kind. I have projected many miles of railways and many more of canals, and the allowance has not even been thought of, much less allowed for. This allowance for curvature means this, that it is 8 inches for the first mile of a canal, and increasing at the ratio by the square of the distance in miles. Thus, a small navigable canal for boats, say 30 miles long, will have, by the above rule, an allowance for curvature of 600 feet. Think of that, and then please credit engineers as not being quite such fools. Nothing of the sort is allowed. We no more think of allowing 600 feet for a line of 30 miles of railway or canal than of wasting our time trying to square the circle. Railroads are another example of large-scale construction projects spanning hundreds or even thousands of miles, working from an established datum line and without deviating for the entire length. The Manchester Ship Canal Company, in an official statement published in Earth Review magazine, confirmed, quote, "It is customary in railway and canal constructions for all levels to be referred to a datum which is nominally horizontal and is so shown on all sections. It is not the practice in laying out public works to make allowances for the curvature of the earth." As an example, the London and Northwestern Railway forms a straight line 180 miles long between London and Liverpool. The railroad's highest point, midway at Birmingham Station, is only 240 feet above sea level. But if Earth was actually a globe of given proportions, the 180-mile stretch of rail would form an arc with its center point at Birmingham raising over a mile, a full 5,400 feet above London and Liverpool. A surveyor and engineer of 30 years, published in the Birmingham Weekly Mercury, stated, "I am thoroughly acquainted with the theory and practice of civil engineering. However bigoted some of our professors may be in the theory of surveying according to the prescribed rules, yet it is well known amongst us that such theoretical measurements are incapable of any practical illustration. All our locomotives are designed to run on what may be regarded as true levels or flats. There are, of course, partial inclines or gradients here and there, but they are always accurately defined and must be carefully traversed. But anything approaching to 8 inches in a mile, increasing as the square of the distance, could not be worked by any engine that was ever yet constructed. Taking one station with another all over England and Scotland, it may be stated that all the platforms are on the same relative level. The distance between eastern and western coasts of England may be set down as 300 miles. If the prescribed curvature was indeed as represented, the central stations at Rugby or Warwick ought to be close upon 3 miles higher than a cord drawn from the two extremities. If such was the case, there is not a driver or stoker within the kingdom that would be found to take charge of the train. We can only laugh at those of your readers who seriously give us credit for such venturesome exploits as running trains round spherical curves. Horizontal curves on levels are dangerous enough. Vertical curves would be 1,000 times worse, and with our rolling stock constructed as at present, physically impossible. 9. Long-distance photography. We are consistently able to observe objects at incredibly long distances, far beyond what would be possible if Earth was actually a globe of given proportions. By inputting the observer height and distance viewed into an Earth curvature calculator, it is easy to check how much a target should be obstructed on a globe Earth. For example, it is often possible to see the Chicago skyline from sea level, 60 miles away across Lake Michigan. In 2015, after photographer Joshua Nowicki photographed this phenomenon, several news channels quickly claimed his picture to be a superior mirage, an atmospheric anomaly caused by temperature inversion. While these certainly do occur, the skyline in question was facing right side up and clearly seen, unlike a hazy, illusory mirage, and on a ball Earth 24,900 miles in circumference should be a full 2,400 feet below the horizon. In Genoa, Italy, from only 70 feet above sea level, on clear days, it is possible to see the distant islands of Elba, Gorgona, Caprea, and Corsica, which are 81, 99, 102, and 125 miles away. If Earth was truly a globe of given proportions, all 4 islands could never be visible for such an observer, and would be hidden behind 3,300, 5,200, 5,600, and 8,700 feet of curved water. From Anchorage, Alaska, at an elevation of 102 feet, on clear days, both Mount Foraker and Mount McKinley can be seen in their entirety, standing straight from base to summit with the naked eye from 120 and 130 miles away, respectively. If Earth was really a ball of given circumference, both mountains should be leaning back away from the observer, with the lower half of each mountain completely obstructed from view. Based on verifiable curvature calculations, 7,719 feet of Mount Foraker's 17,400-foot summit and 9,220 feet of Mount McKinley's 20,320-foot summit should be hidden behind a giant bulge of curved globular Earth. The current record-breaking longest-distance zoom photograph recently captured Pic Gaspard from Peak the Finestrelles, a whopping 275 miles away, with an observer height of approximately 9,000 feet, from which, based on correct curvature calculations, the entire 12,740-foot mountain should be invisible behind nearly 6 miles of curved Earth. Even more recently, flat earthers like J. Tolan Media have been filming using infrared zoom cameras at high altitudes to capture lakes, mountains, and other landmarks up to an incredible 1,000 miles away. If Earth was really a globe the size we are told, many of the landmarks photographed would be hidden behind upwards of 70 miles of curved Earth. Aristotle said, "Nothing is more challenging than the ability to study, debate, and think through a concept without immediately accepting or rejecting it. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." And F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote, "The truest sign of intelligence is the ability to entertain two contradictory ideas simultaneously."
We can fight our desires. But when we start making fires, we get absorbed. Whether we like it or not. They say we can love and we trust. But when it's not without lust. Two hearts and accurate emotions. What it feels without emotions. I'm going in for the kill. I'm doing it for a thrill. I'm hoping you'll understand. And then I go in mine. I'm going in for the kill. I'm doing it for a thrill. I'm hoping you'll understand. And then I go in mine. Oh my, oh summer night. Ooh, I'll be ready for you in time. If you leave out too long, ooh, I'll be withered by the sun. Full stops and exclamation marks. Ooh, my words stumble before I start. How far can you send emotions? Ooh, can this bridge cross the ocean? I'm going in for a kill. I'm doing it for a thrill. I'm hoping you'll understand. And then I go mine. I'm going in for a kill. I'm doing it for a thrill. I'm hoping you'll understand. And then I go mine. I'm going in for the kill. I'm doing it for a thrill. I'm hoping you'll understand. And then I go mine. I'm going in for the kill. I'm doing it for a thrill. I'm hoping you'll understand. And then I go mine. I'm going in.
I just needed to share that post by Matt Zetz. Check out Rob Skiba's work if you haven't already. I have. I love, he corrected himself also. I actually just want to prove that. Some people type really fast like I do sometimes and we make spelling errors. Rob Skiba, yes, absolutely check him out. I freaking love him. Rest in peace. Oh, he's fought the good fight. He was such a warrior, such a good man. Yeah, like rest in peace. It's just such a shame what happened to him. Brilliant, absolutely genius. I've shared some of his work already, although it's been a little while, and I could not agree more with that. Please, people, take a look at Rob Skiba's work. Yeah.
It's hard to all I know. So unreal. Watch you I tried so hard and got so far.
And yes, like these videos are long, but these are for records as well. And so I highly recommend and encourage people also go on Eric Dubé's channel. But who knows how long it's going to be up on YouTube. Again, I've had multiple accounts deleted and I've had to start from scratch. And even on and Rumble, I just started a little over a year ago. I should have started earlier, but it's good to keep a record of these things, and you can speed it up, and just take bits out. But this is why I do like to record as much as possible.
But in the end, it doesn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all. But in the end, it doesn't even matter. I tried so hard and got so far. But in the end, it doesn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all. But in the end, it doesn't even matter.
You know, what they're selling is this. You came from nothing. You are nothing. You're completely insignificant. You're a goo that exploded in an ape in a vast, endless, infinite universe spinning on a freaking ball at a little bit of a tilt with endless stars and other planets and things that we've never even seen before because no one's actually been there.
I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all, but in the end, it doesn't even matter.
Lighthouses. The distance from which various lighthouse lights around the world are visible at sea also far exceeds what can be found on a globe of given proportions. For example, the Dunkirk light in southern France, at an altitude of 194 feet, is visible from a boat 10 feet above sea level, 28 miles away. Spherical trigonometry dictates that if Earth was a globe with a given curvature rate, this light should be hidden 190 feet below the horizon. The Port Nicholson light in New Zealand is 420 feet above sea level and visible from 35 miles away, where it should be 220 feet below the horizon. The Agero light in Norway is 154 feet above high water and visible from 28 statute miles, where it should be 230 feet below the horizon. The light at Madras on the Esplanade is 132 feet high and visible from 28 miles away, where it should be 250 feet below the line of sight. The Cordonin light on the west coast of France is 207 feet high and visible from 31 miles away, where it should be 280 feet below the line of sight. The light at Cape Bonavista, Newfoundland, is 150 feet above sea level and visible at 35 miles, where it should be 491 feet below the horizon. The lighthouse steeple of St. Botolph's Parish Church in Boston is 290 feet tall, and visible from over 40 miles away, where it should be hidden a full 800 feet below the horizon. The Isle of Wight Lighthouse in England is 180 feet high and can be seen up to 42 miles away, a distance at which modern astronomers say the light should fall 996 feet below the line of sight. The Cape Legulas Lighthouse in South Africa is 33 feet high, 238 feet above sea level, and can be seen for over 50 miles. If the world was a globe, this light would fall 1,400 feet below an observer's line of sight. And finally, the lighthouse at Port Said, Egypt, at an elevation of only 60 feet, has been seen an astonishing 58 miles away, where according to modern astronomy, it should be 2,182 feet below the line of sight. 11. Impossible atmosphere. If Earth was truly a globe, constantly spinning eastwards at over 1,000 miles per hour, it stands to reason that helicopters and hot air balloons should be able to simply hover over the surface of the Earth and wait for their destinations to come to them. For example, during the Red Bull Stratosphere dive, Felix Baumgartner, spending 3 hours ascending over New Mexico, should have landed 2,500 miles west into the Pacific Ocean, but instead actually landed a few dozen miles east of the takeoff point. Likewise, vertically fired cannonballs and other projectiles should fall significantly due west on an eastward spinning ball. In actual fact, however, whenever this has been tested, vertically fired cannonballs shoot upwards an average of 14 seconds ascending, 14 seconds descending, and fall back to the ground no more than 2 feet away from the cannon, sometimes directly back into the muzzle. To account for this problem, globe defenders claim that gravity somehow magically and inexplicably drags the entire lower atmosphere of the Earth in perfect synchronization up to some undetermined height, where this progressively faster and faster spinning atmosphere gives way to the non-spinning, non-gravitized, non-atmosphere of supposed infinite vacuum space. NASA refuses to answer at what altitude this impossible feat allegedly happens, but the effect such a transition would have on a craft traversing it would be disastrous. It is also scientifically refuted by the simple fact that vacuums cannot exist connected to non-vacuums while maintaining the properties of a vacuum. As anyone who has punctured an aerosol can knows, two adjacent pressure systems, not separated by some kind of barrier or membrane, will equilibrate. If gravity magically dragged the atmosphere along with the spinning ball Earth, that would mean the atmosphere at the poles would be spinning at 0 miles per hour, while over the mid-latitudes, it would be spinning around 500 miles per hour. And gradually faster until reaching the equator, where Earth and the atmosphere would be spinning together at over 1,000 miles per hour. Not only would this gravitized atmosphere increase speed from poles to the equator, but would also necessarily progressively increase speed the higher the altitude. In reality, however, the atmosphere at every point on Earth is equally unaffected by this alleged force, as it has never been measured and is proven non-existent by the ability of airplanes to fly unabated in any direction without experiencing any such atmospheric changes. Landing airplanes on such fast-moving runways, facing all manner of directions, north, south, east, west, and otherwise, would also be practically impossible. Not to mention rain, fireworks, birds, bugs, clouds, smoke, balloons, and projectiles would all behave very differently if the Earth and its atmosphere were constantly spinning. Tests were conducted in the 19th century with cannons facing each of the cardinal directions, which proved Earth and its atmosphere are not spinning. If they were, then north and south-facing cannons would establish a control, while east-firing cannonballs should fall significantly farther than all others, while west-firing cannonballs should fall significantly closer. In actual fact, however, regardless of which direction cannons are fired, the distance covered is always the same. Common sense tells us if Earth and its atmosphere were constantly spinning eastwards over 1,000 miles per hour, this should somewhere, somehow, be seen, heard, felt, or measured by someone, yet no one in history has ever experienced this alleged eastward motion. Meanwhile, however, we can hear, feel, and experimentally measure even the slightest westward breeze. Furthermore, clouds, wind, and weather patterns casually and unpredictably meander every which way, with clouds often traveling in opposing directions at varying altitudes simultaneously. This is altogether incompatible with the theory of a rapidly rotating Earth and atmosphere. 12. Flight times. If Earth and its atmosphere were constantly spinning eastwards over 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, then the average commercial airliner traveling 500 miles per hour should never be able to reach its eastward destinations before they come speeding up from behind. Likewise, westward destinations should be arrived at thrice the speed, but this is not the case. In reality, the differences between eastbound and westbound flight durations usually amount to a matter of minutes, and nothing near what would occur on a spinning globe. As Gabrielle Henriette stated in her book Heaven and Earth, if flying had been invented at the time of Copernicus, there is no doubt that he would have soon realized that his contention regarding the rotation of the Earth was wrong. on account of the relation existing between the speed of an aircraft and that of the Earth's rotation. If the Earth rotates, as it is said, at 1,000 miles an hour, and a plane flies in the same direction at only 500 miles, it is obvious that its place of destination will be farther removed every minute. On the other hand, if flying took place in the direction opposite to that of the rotation, a distance of 1,500 miles would be covered in 1 hour instead of 500, since the speed of the rotation is to be added to that of the plane. It could also be pointed out that such a flying speed of 1,000 miles an hour, which is supposed to be that of the Earth's rotation, has recently been achieved, so that an aircraft flying at this rate in the same direction as that of the rotation could not cover any ground at all. It would remain suspended in midair over the spot from which it took off, since both speeds are equal. The spinning globe model dictates that Earth and its atmosphere would be moving together 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, and progressively slower, approaching.
I got up at 4 a.m. this morning. I'm so tired. I don't know why I get so much more tired these days, but to put that in perspective, if you got up at like 9 a.m., you still woke up like 5 hours after me. It's been almost 12 hours since I've been up.
Zero closer to the pole.
And I'm always up around 4 a.m. Crazy.
The following examples all take place at the mid-latitudes, where the globe model claims that Earth and its atmosphere should be moving together at approximately 500 miles per hour, the same as the average flight speed of a commercial airliner. Flights from Los Angeles to New York City, traveling east with the alleged rotation of the Earth, take an average of 5.5 hours, for instance, so the return flight west should only take 2 3/4 hours. But in fact, the average New York City to LA flight actually takes upward of 6 hours, a time totally inconsistent with the spinning globe model. Flights eastward with the alleged spin of the Earth from Tokyo to Los Angeles take an average of 10.5 hours. Therefore, return flights westward against the alleged spin should take an average of 5 1/4 hours, but in actual fact, take an average of 11.5 hours, another flight duration totally inconsistent with the globe model. Eastbound flights from New York to London take an average of 7 hours. Therefore, the westbound flights against the alleged spin should take an average of 3.5 hours, but in reality, they take an average of 7.5 hours. Eastward flights from Chicago to Boston with the alleged spin of the Earth take an average of 2 1/4 hours. Therefore, the return flights westward against the alleged spin should take an average of just over an hour, but in reality, they take an average of 2.75 hours. Flights eastward from Paris to Rome take an average of 2 hours. Therefore, the return flights westward against the alleged spin should take only 1 hour, but in actual fact, have an average flight duration of 2 hours and 10 minutes. All of these flight times are impossible on a 1,000-mile-per-hour eastward spinning ball, but are consistent with what would be expected over a stationary Earth. 13. Flight paths. If Earth was truly a ball, then there are several flights in the southern hemisphere which would have their quickest, straightest path over the Antarctic continent, such as Santiago, Chile, to Sydney, Australia. Instead of taking the shortest, quickest route in a straight line over Antarctica, however, all such flights detour all manner of directions away from Antarctica, instead claiming the temperatures are too cold for airplane travel. Considering the fact that there are plenty of flights to, from, and over Antarctica, and NASA claims to have technology keeping them in conditions far colder and far hotter than any experienced on Earth, such an excuse is clearly just an excuse, and these flights aren't made because they're impossible. If Earth was a ball and Antarctica was too cold to fly over, the only logical way to fly from Sydney to Santiago would be a straight shot over the Pacific, staying in the southern hemisphere the entire way. Refueling could be done in New Zealand or other southern hemisphere destinations along the way, if absolutely necessary. But in reality, Santiago to Sydney flights go into the northern hemisphere, making stopovers at LAX and other North American airports before continuing back down to the southern hemisphere. Such ridiculously wayward detours make no sense on the globe, but make perfect sense and form nearly straight lines when shown on a flat Earth map. On a globe, Johannesburg, South Africa to Perth, Australia should be a straight shot over the Indian Ocean, with convenient refueling possibilities on Mauritius or Madagascar. In actual practice, however, most Johannesburg to Perth flights curiously stop over either in Dubai, Hong Kong, or Malaysia, all of which make no sense on the ball model, but are completely understandable when mapped on a flat Earth. On a globe, Cape Town, South Africa to Buenos Aires, Argentina should be a straight shot over the Atlantic, following the same line of latitude across. But instead, every flight goes to connecting locations in the northern hemisphere first, stopping over anywhere from London to Turkey to Dubai. Once again, these make absolutely no sense on the ball model, but are completely understandable options when mapped on a flat Earth. On a globe, Santiago, Chile to Johannesburg, South Africa should be an easy flight, all taking place below the Tropic of Capricorn in the southern hemisphere. Yet every listed flight makes a curious refueling stop in Senegal near the Tropic of Cancer in the North Hemisphere first. When mapped on a flat Earth, the reason why is clear to see, because Senegal is actually directly in a straight line path halfway between the two. On a globe, Johannesburg, South Africa to Sao Paulo, Brazil should be a quick straight shot along the 25th southern latitude, but instead, nearly every flight makes a refueling stop at the 50th degree north latitude in London first. The only reason such ridiculous stopovers work in reality is because the Earth is not a spinning ball. 14. Latitude and longitude. If Earth was truly a globe, then every line of latitude south of the equator would have to measure a gradually smaller and smaller circumference the farther south traveled. If Earth is an extended plane, however, then every line of latitude south of the equator should measure a gradually larger and larger circumference the farther south traveled. Practical distance measurements taken from the Australian Handbook, Almanac Shippers and Importers Directory state that the straight line distance between Sydney and Nelson is 1,550 statute miles, with a given difference in longitude of 22 degrees, 2 minutes, and 14 seconds. Therefore, if 22 degrees, 2 minutes, and 14 seconds out of 360 degrees is 1,550 miles, the entirety would measure 25,182 miles, which is not only larger than the globe is said to be at the equator, but a whole 4,262 miles greater than it would be at Sydney's southern latitude on a globe of given proportions. From near Cape Horn, Chile, to Port Phillip in Melbourne, Australia, the distance is 10,500 miles, or 143 degrees of longitude away. Factoring the remaining degrees to 360 makes for a total distance of 26,430 miles around this particular latitude, which is over 1,500 miles wider than Earth is supposed to be at the equator, and many more thousands of miles wider than it is supposed to be at such southern latitudes. Similar calculations made from the Cape of Good Hope, South Africa, to Melbourne, Australia, at an average latitude of 35.5 degrees south, have given an approximate figure of over 25,000 miles, which is again greater than the Earth's supposed circumference at the equator. Meanwhile, calculations from Sydney, Australia, to Wellington, New Zealand, at an average of 37.5 degrees south, have given an approximate circumference of 25,500 miles, greater still. According to the globe model, the circumference of Earth at 37.5 degrees south latitude should be only 19,757 statute miles, almost 6,000 miles less than such practical measurements. The fact that many captains navigating south of the equator, assuming the globular theory, have found themselves drastically out of reckoning, more so the farther south traveled, also testifies to the fact that the Earth is not a ball. For example, during Captain James Clark Ross's voyages around the Antarctic circumference, he often wrote in his journal, perplexed at how they routinely found themselves out of accordance with their charts, stating that they found themselves an average of 12 to 16 miles outside their reckoning every day. Later on, farther south, as much as 29 miles. Lieutenant Charles Wilkes commanded a United States Navy exploration expedition to the Antarctic from 1838 to 1842, and in his journals also mentioned being consistently east of his reckoning, sometimes over 20 miles in less than 18 hours. Quoting Reverend Thomas Milner, "In the South Hemisphere, navigators to India have often fancied themselves east of the Cape when still west, and have been driven ashore on the African coast, which, according to their reckoning, lay behind them. This misfortune happened to a fine frigate, the Challenger, in 1845. How came Her Majesty's ship Conqueror to be lost? How have so many other noble vessels, perfectly sound, perfectly manned, perfectly navigated, been wrecked in calm weather, not only in dark night or in a fog, but in broad daylight and sunshine, in the former case upon the coasts, and in the latter upon sunken rocks, from being out of reckoning? The simple answer is that Earth is not a ball. In the globe model, Antarctica is an ice continent which covers the bottom of the ball from 78 degrees south latitude to 90, and is therefore not much more than 12,000 miles in circumference. Many early explorers, including Captain Cook and James Clark Ross, however, in attempting to circumnavigate Antarctica, took upwards of 3 to 4 years and clocked between 50,000 and 60,000 miles around. Captain George Nares, on his Challenger expedition, also made an indirect but complete circumnavigation of Antarctica, traversing 69,000 miles, which is entirely inconsistent with the globe model. Hervé Raboni, who circumnavigated the world during the 1993 Whitbread yacht race, has recently become a flat earther himself, and claims that the deception is done through the hoax of magnetic declination. Hervé insists that on our flat Earth, magnetic declination does not exist, and the addition of this globe-based chart and mathematics to navigation calculations is what keeps pilots and sailors on course.
Now, the North Pole is the center of an ocean 10,000 feet deep. The South Pole, the center of a plateau, 10,000 feet high. The North Polar Sea is surrounded by continents that are slightly frozen. The Antarctic continent is surrounded by a belt of ice seas are at least, in some places, 14,000 feet up. I've been over areas about 13,000. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by human being. And that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole, from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored. It happens to be an untouched reservoir of natural resources. And, as the world shrinks with an ever-increasing acceleration, far-flung places, once useless, like we thought the North Pole was, and no man's land, become very useful.
People get really confused by the cardinal directions and how they work on the flat Earth. The only real direction we know is north.
Yeah.
North to the center, where the compass points to, and that the pole star
Yeah.
is right above it, which is the one unmoving star that all the other stars revolve around.
Yeah.
So there's a middle point on Earth that corresponds with the middle point on the sky, and that is north.
Yeah.
Every line outwards, straight from that, is a
Straight
southward line.
Yeah.
A circle
Yeah.
around them with
That
Polaris 90 degrees
Yeah.
to either shoulder is an east,
East
or
or
west
west.
course. People are confused about the ball Earth because they're told that if you travel east in one direction, just keep going straight, you'll come back to the place you started. Now, first of all, nobody's ever done that.
Yeah.
When they were sailing, they would sail around the continents
Continents,
anyway.
yeah.
So nobody has or could go in a literal straight line and
East
come
or
back
west,
to the place.
except for Captain Cook and that who were trying to.
He wasn't going in a straight line either.
No, because they were trying to
They
hug
were
the
trying to find it
coastline.
in the
Yeah.
Antarctic coastline.
And they never
Captain
did.
Cook, Captain George Nares, and Captain James Clark Ross
Yeah.
are three people that had big expeditions, many years long, 3 to 4 years, and
More than
charted 60
50,000
to
miles, yeah.
60 to 70,000 miles, never finding an inlet to the
All
Antarctic
getting
ice
back
wall.
to the starting point, right? And now none of us are allowed to go down there.
Right.
I mean, in
And
the
if we
same
talk about it
sense.
as well, it's the craziest thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have footage, great footage now. We look at John Thor's channel.
Oh, he's
The
great.
Antarctic ice wall. He's
Yeah.
got some footage that somebody posted, and it just goes on from hundreds
Yeah.
of miles.
Yeah.
You can just see, it looks to be about, like they say, a 200 or so foot ice wall, and then a plateau
Yeah.
over it.
Yeah. Just
Which makes perfect sense. We're in like a puddle.
Yeah.
The oceans must be contained. All water needs to be contained.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense that there would be a container of some sort on the outer circumference, and it would be risen above the oceans to some degree. And of course, those explorers, they never went up on that plateau. They just
Yeah.
sailed around it.
They can't get
The
up
first,
on
the
there.
first operation to go up on it was called Operation High Jump.
Yeah.
To jump
Get up
on,
there was
on the
that
wall.
bird,
That was
that
that bird. And he was a 33rd degree
Freemason.
Freemason he took like 4,000 military men with him, I think, for the trip.
And didn't he go on
And they came back
TV
with
in
half-
front of a flat Earth map?
in front of a flat Earth map, and he said that he found land the size of America beyond Antarctica.
Yeah.
So whether that's true or not is hearsay.
He is over the Shackleton Ice Shelf, named for the great English explorer who kept returning to the Antarctic until death so often escaped.
Periscope Films. This is military propaganda that was started very early on. And you can see a lot of really interesting things in the background.
Kept its rendezvous.
Anyway,
The smooth shelf roughness, dark rocks, called nunataks, appear
I'm
above
controversial enough.
the ice. Then rugged mountain ranges as far as the eye can see.
I had some guy he made a comment on Rumble. I blocked him for 5 minutes from being able to comment. But like his comment was horse crap. What's horse crap? Like, can you be a little bit more elaborate? You know what I mean? Like, can you specify? Can you elaborate? I mean, and not just say that when I'm like, sharing actual like proof.
Bunger leans forward in amazement. His eyes have caught a sudden
You
and
get horse
unbelievable
slaughter.
change in scenery. The universal white is turned to chocolate brown, dotted with blue. A cameraman goes into action. 300 square miles of land without snow. Land that might be in New Mexico or Arizona. Pictures alone will prove Bunger has discovered a warm oasis in the shadow of the pole. It is for such supreme moments as this that men brave the hardships of exploration. The astounding, undreamed of fact is that they are over a chain of warm water lakes, whose shores, except for small patches, are free of ice and snow. Commander Bunger circles the largest lake in sight, 5 miles long. He comes in to make a landing. Water temperatures must be recorded. Samples taken. He finds the water fresh, temperature 38 degrees Fahrenheit. On the shores are vast deposits of coal and of minerals of the utmost importance to civilization.
Byrd is among the last aboard. He can now report to Admiral Nimitz. Operation High Jump complete.
15. Arctic versus Antarctic. If Earth was truly a globe, the Arctic and Antarctic polar regions and areas of comparable latitude north and south of the equator should share similar conditions and characteristics, such as comparable temperatures, seasonal changes, length of daylight, plant and animal life. In reality, however, the Arctic and Antarctic regions and areas of comparable latitude north and south of the equator differ greatly in many ways, entirely inconsistent with the globe model, but exactly as expected on a flat Earth. For example, Antarctica is by far the coldest place on Earth, with an average annual temperature of approximately negative 57 degrees Fahrenheit and a record low of negative 135.8. The average annual temperature at the North Pole, however, is a comparatively warm 4 degrees. Throughout the year, temperatures in the Antarctic vary less than half the amount at comparable Arctic latitudes, and the northern Arctic region enjoys moderately warm summers and manageable winters, whereas the southern Antarctic region never even warms enough to melt the perpetual snow and ice. On a tilting, wobbling ball Earth spinning uniformly around the sun, Arctic and Antarctic temperatures and seasons should not vary so greatly. In the Arctic, there are 4 clearly distinguished seasons, warm summers, and an abundance of plant and animal life, none of which can be said of the Antarctic. The Eskimo also live as far north as the 79th parallel, whereas in the south, no native man is found beyond the 56th. Iceland, at 65 degrees north latitude, is home to 870 species of native plants and abundant various animal life. Compare this with the Isle of Georgia at just 54 degrees south latitude, where there are only 18 species of native plants, and animal life is almost non-existent. At the same latitude as Canada or England in the north, where dense forests of various tall trees abound, Captain Cook wrote of Georgia that he was unable to find a single shrub large enough to make a toothpick. Cook wrote, "Not a tree was to be seen. The lands which lie to the south are doomed by nature to perpetual frigidness, never to feel the warmth of the sun's rays, whose horrible and savage aspect I have not words to describe. Even marine life is sparse in certain tracts of vast extent, and the seabird is seldom observed flying over such lonely wastes. The contrasts between the limits of organic life in the Arctic and Antarctic zones is very remarkable and significant. At places of comparable latitude north and south, the sun also behaves very differently than it should on the globe model, but exactly as expected over a flat Earth. For example, in the north, dawn and dusk come slowly and last far longer than in the south, where they come and go very quickly. Certain places in the north, twilight can last for over an hour, while at comparable southern latitudes, within a few minutes, the sunlight completely disappears. Also, the longest summer days north of the equator are much longer than those south of the equator, and the shortest winter days north of the equator are much shorter than the shortest south of the equator. These facts are inexplicable on a uniformly spinning, wobbling ball Earth, but make perfect sense on a flat Earth with the sun traveling faster, wider circles over the south and slower, narrower circles over the north. 16. The midnight sun. The midnight sun is an Arctic phenomenon occurring annually during the summer solstice, where for several days straight, observers north of the Arctic Circle can watch the sun traveling circles overhead, rising and falling throughout the day, but never fully setting for upwards of 72 plus hours. If the Earth was actually a spinning globe revolving around the sun, the only place such a phenomenon as the midnight sun could be observed would be at the poles. Any other vantage point, from 89 degrees latitude downwards, could never, regardless of any tilt or inclination, see the sun for over 24 hours straight. To do so on a spinning globe at a point other than the poles, you would have to be looking through miles and miles of land and sea for part of the revolution. Some people claim there is a similar phenomenon in Antarctica, but they coincidentally don't have any uncut videos showing this. The few videos available online have been suspiciously edited or manipulated, and the Antarctic Treaty doesn't allow independent explorers to travel there during the winter solstice to verify or refute these claims. Conversely, there are dozens of uncut videos publicly available showing the Arctic midnight sun, and it has been verified beyond any shadow of a doubt, as anyone can travel and confirm for themselves. Furthermore, every year from the 71st degree south latitude onwards, the sun sets on May 17th and is not seen above the horizon again until July 21st. This is totally at odds with the globe model, but easily explained on a flat Earth. The midnight sun is seen within the Arctic Circle during summer solstice because the sun, at its innermost cycle, is circling tightly enough around the polar center that it constantly remains visible above the horizon for someone at such a vantage point. Likewise, in extreme southern latitudes during that time, the sun completely disappears from view for over 2 months because there at the northern tropic, at the innermost cycle of its boomerang journey, the sun is circling the northern center too tightly to be seen from the southern circumference. 17. Polaris. In the heliocentric model, they claim Earth is a globe spinning 1,000 miles per hour around its axis, while revolving tens of thousands of miles per hour around the sun, while the entire solar system circles hundreds of thousands of miles per hour around the Milky Way, and the entire galaxy shoots millions of miles per hour more off through infinite space. In reality, no one in history has ever seen, heard, felt, or measured such motions, and everyone can clearly see for themselves that Polaris, the pole star, situated directly over the North Pole center of Earth, never moves, night after night, year after year, century after century, with all the other fixed stars remaining fixed in their relative constellations, revolving perfect circles around it. Such circular star trails around an unmoving pole star, seen in time-lapse photos, prove that it is the stars themselves moving and not the Earth. If Earth was truly a tilting, wobbling, spinning space ball undergoing these multiple contradictory motions through the universe, you would only ever see irregular, random, spiral-shaped star trails, and the night sky would never be the same twice. It would be impossible for constellations to exist whatsoever if Earth was truly performing all these various theoretical motions. Quoting 100 Proofs Earth is Not a Globe by William Carpenter, why in the name of common sense should observers have to fix their telescopes on solid stone bases so that they should not move a hair's breadth if the Earth on which they fix them moves at the rate of 19 miles in a second? Indeed, to believe that 6,000 million tons is rolling, surging, flying, darting on through space forever, with a velocity compared with which a shot from a cannon is a very slow coach, with such unerring accuracy that a telescope fixed on granite pillars in an observatory will not enable a lynx-eyed astronomer to detect a variation in its onward motion of the thousandth part of a hair's breadth, is to conceive a miracle compared with which all the miracles on record put together would sink into utter insignificance. Since we can, in middle north latitudes, see the North Star on looking out of a window that faces it, and out of the very same corner of the very same pane of glass in the very same window all the year round, it is proof enough for any man in his senses that we have made no motion at all, and that the Earth is not a globe. 18. Sigma Octantis. Sigma Octantis is claimed to be a southern central pole star similar to Polaris, around which the southern hemisphere stars all rotate around the opposite direction. Unlike Polaris, however, Sigma Octantis cannot be seen simultaneously from every point along the same latitude. It is not central, but allegedly 1 degree off center. It is not motionless, and in fact cannot be seen at all using commercially available telescopes. There is legitimate speculation regarding whether Sigma Octantis even exists. The heliocentric model claims stars south of the equator revolve the opposite direction around Sigma Octantis, but in reality, all the luminaries revolve the same direction, east to west, around Polaris, like in a planetarium dome. Our Earth planetarium, however, is too vast for any observer to see all the stars simultaneously from one vantage point, so their apparent motion, angle, and inclination changes based on perspective and the exact direction faced. Quoting Earth Not a Globe by Dr. Samuel Robotham, another thing is certain, that from within the equator, the North Pole star, and the constellations Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and many others can be seen from every meridian simultaneously, whereas in the south, from the equator, neither the so-called South Pole star nor the remarkable constellation of the Southern Cross can be seen simultaneously from every meridian, showing that all the constellations of the South Pole star included sweep over a great southern arc and across the meridian, from their rise in the evening to their setting in the morning. But if the Earth is a globe, Sigma Octantis, a South Pole star, and the Southern Cross, a southern circumpolar constellation, they would all be visible at the same time from every longitude on the same latitude, as is the case with the Northern Pole star and the northern circumpolar constellations. Such, however, is not the case. 19. Local sun. Heliocentrists' astronomical figures always sound perfectly precise, but they have historically been notorious for regularly and drastically changing them to suit their various models. For instance, in his time, Copernicus calculated the sun's distance from Earth to be exactly 3,391,200 miles. The next century, Johannes Kepler decided it was actually 12,376,800 miles away. Isaac Newton said during his time that, quote, it matters not whether we reckon it 28 or 54 million miles distant, for either would do just as well. Benjamin Martin calculated between 81 and 82 million miles. Thomas Dilworth claimed 93,726,900 miles. John Hind stated positively 95,298,260 miles. Benjamin Gould said more than 96 million miles, and Christian Mayer thought it was more than 104 million. Nowadays, current heliocentric theorists have settled on a figure of 93 million miles, but all of these ridiculous distances are easily proven wrong by the same method flat earthers have used for centuries. Measuring with sextants and calculating with plane trigonometry, both the sun and moon figure to be only approximately 30 miles in diameter and less than 3,000 miles away. Furthermore, amateur balloon footage taken above the clouds has provided stunning visual proof that the sun cannot be millions of miles away. In several shots, you can see a clear hot spot reflecting on the clouds directly below the sun's spotlight-like influence. If the sun were actually millions of miles away, such a small, localized hot spot could not occur. Another proof the sun is not millions of miles away is found by tracing the angle of sun rays back to their source above the clouds. There are countless pictures and videos showing how sunlight comes down through cloud cover at a variance of converging angles. The area of convergence is of course the sun, and is clearly not millions of miles away, but rather relatively close to Earth. The fact that the sun and moon's reflections on water always form a straight line path from the horizon all the way to the observer also proves Earth is not a ball. If Earth's surface was curved, it would be impossible for the reflected light to bend over the ball. 20. Scientific experiments. Several experiments have been performed and repeated by notable scientists like Albert Michelson, Edward Morley, George Airy, and George Segnack, proving that it is the stars that revolve around a stationary Earth and not the other way around. The conclusive results of their experiments are not contested or even mentioned in modern astronomy books, but rather conveniently swept under the carpet to keep prying minds from seeing through the lies. For example, the experiment known as Airy's failure, since it failed to confirm heliocentricity, proved that the stars move relative to a stationary Earth and not the other way around. By first filling a telescope with water to slow down the speed of light inside, then calculating the tilt necessary to get the starlight directly down the tube, Airy failed to prove the heliocentric theory, since the starlight was already coming in the correct angle, with no change necessary, and instead proved the geocentric model. The Michelson-Morley, Michelson-Gale, and Sagnac experiments also attempted to measure the change in speed of light due to Earth's assumed motion through space. After measuring in every possible different direction in various locations, they all failed to detect any significant change whatsoever, again proving the stationary geocentric model. Suffice to say, these 20 points are just scratching the surface, and there are many, many more proofs available, both in William Carpenter's book, 100 Proofs Earth is Not a Globe, and my own book, 200 Proofs Earth is Not a Spinning Ball.
Why lie about the shape of the Earth? It just seems irrelevant. But imagine if you are a real forward-thinking psychopath, and you want to create a new worldview for your subjects. Where do you start? What's the first big lie that you have to tell everyone so that you can totally control their worldview and become their authority figure, because you know things that they don't know, that they can't access about reality, that you've figured out and it's been established, and they just have to trust you now. Well, obviously, cosmology, the Earth, and everything beyond us, in the sky, above and below. So if you're going to fashion a worldview for your subjects beneath you, and the whole point is to lie to them so that you can gain control over them, the first, the biggest, the most fundamental, foundational lie you need to tell is this one. People have just been under the spell for so long that they can't even see, why would you lie about this thing, the shape of the Earth? It seems so irrelevant. It's not. It's incredibly relevant. If you're going to imagine if you took somebody captive since childhood, put them in a box, and all they knew was whatever you told them from their box. They'd never get outside, know anything about the outside world. You get to feed them all information about what's outside the box. Well, that's literally what is happening to us. Like you said, with the Antarctic Treaty, with NASA telling us what is out in outer space above us. Oh, it's millions and billions and trillions of miles. Oh, okay. And so then we get in our imaginations like they're making us do, rather than be physical explorers like we can and should do. And then we'd actually find answers. But we don't have that kind of thinking because we've been given these pseudo answers and placated and thinking we know things that we don't know. And so that is what the controllers have doing, and why they're doing it is because this fundamentally makes you think you know things that you don't know. So then you grow this ego inside of you, and you start defending the people that lied to you because they are the purveyors and explorers who found out all this knowledge that you just believe because you haven't actually figured it out for yourself. And when a flat earther comes around and is skeptical, you just think, how could you possibly be skeptical about something that has been so established? And you only think it's been established because so many people have believed it for so long. And there are many pseudo explanations that are offered over and over again that people have believed for so long. If you delve into it deeper than that, that's when you get to the meat of it. But most people are satisfied by that surface level stuff. And so you can't really break through to it. And they'll just give you questions like, but why would they lie about the shape of the Earth as a defense mechanism, more so than an actual question? They don't really want to know the answer. They're asking you the question because they think it's a way to shut you up, because it's such a ridiculous, whatever you say, however you answer that, it's going to be ridiculous to them. To control us for money, whatever you say, they'll scoff at it. And of course, the question is kind of like a setup too, because how could you know why someone else is lying? You're not the liar. Ask them. Why'd you ask me? So the whole question, in essence, you're asking the wrong person anyway, and so you can't answer it to their satisfaction. It's kind of a trap.
Millions of people worldwide are waking up to this incredible rediscovery, and this flat Earth movement has the potential to bring about positive change on an unprecedented level. Like a balloon held underwater for 500 years, the momentum of truth rising to the surface is causing and will continue to cause huge ripples in the control system. As the spinning ball Earth is finally being exposed worldwide for the 500-year deception it was, Earth's entire population is suddenly being faced with the reality that every government, every space agency, university, secret society, religious organization, mainstream and alternative media outlet have all been duplicitous in propping up a monstrous manipulation to fleece and control the masses. The resulting mass mental exodus away from the control system is exactly what humanity needs. Once the flat Earth truth gets out, these lying politicians, spokesmen, reporters, and teachers suddenly change from being heralded voices of authority to being ridiculed, shunned, and denounced as they deserve. Once the flat Earth truth gets out, these governments, universities, media outlets, and other entangled organizations, which have long been hard at work weaving this multi-generational cosmological myth, suddenly and completely lose all credibility. Once the truth of our flat Earth gets out, so does the truth of these few elite families and societies who have kept this most important and fundamental reality from us for these hundreds of years. Essentially, once the flat Earth truth gets out, so does every other important truth by proxy, because this mother of all conspiracies holds under its umbrella literally all of the other conspiracies and exposes them.
But another thing that's not that it bothers me, but I see this a lot. A lot of people who write to me and say, Mel, you're just wasting your energy. There are so many other important things that we should be discussing, and we do, folks. We've had Eric last year. We've had, a few other people. We have Jeffrey Grupp coming in a few days. These are people that I've had before who are talking about this, and I think we should listen. But why do they continue to say we have so many other problems? Why are you focusing on this distraction?
Well, if they haven't looked into it at all, I can see how they would think that way. And I kind of thought that way years ago as well, that, well, it's just the shape of the Earth. What does that matter? Does it really matter whether it's this shape or that shape? So if you think of it on that level, then sure, it seems insignificant, and it seems like it could be a waste of time, even if it was true. But if you think of it a little deeper than that, and you think of it as being the most fundamental lie, is where we are, what we're doing here, the Earth beneath our feet, the lights in the sky above us, what they actually are. And if we've been lied about all of these, as well as the Big Bang and evolution and the way that we supposedly got here and the purpose we may or may not have in this nihilistic cosmology that they presented with us, it becomes a big deal. And when you look at the potential for a truth like this, a truth that has been suppressed for 500 years now, the flat Earth truth, if that gets out and it is shown that every government, every university, every pundit, every television station is lying knowingly and censoring this truth, what happens when it actually gets out? The kind of restructuring of society and the system that truthers are looking for, that people know we need, is what can happen and what will happen and what must happen if this truth gets out, because this is huge. It is the truth. I guarantee anyone who's never heard of this before, look into the flat Earth. The Earth is flat, just like it appears on the horizon. The Earth is motionless, just as you feel motionless. Everything in the sky revolves around us, just as it appears if you look up and use your own eyes, your own senses. Everything that your senses tell you is what's happening. But you've been fed a false system. You've been shown CGI images with a ball Earth with a horizon that curves. You've been shown more CGI images with a ball Earth that spins. You've been shown planets that spin like billiard balls around each other in many different directions at many different speeds simultaneously. You've been shown all these things in CGI format. You've had Freemasons lie to you and tell you they've seen it for themselves, but you've never seen it for yourself. You've just been lied to and shown pictures, and you believe those. It's not science. Science, in fact, shows that the Earth is flat and motionless. And there are hundreds upon hundreds of proofs and experiments that have been repeated throughout history for hundreds of years, but you haven't been taught them in school because they don't want you to be taught that in school. They show you a spinning globe on your first day and tell you that gravity keeps water and buildings and people stuck to the bottom of that thing. And they repeat it until you believe it, your parents believe it, your grandparents believe it. 500 years ago, people were believing it. They even started trying to get people to believe it thousands of years ago, but it didn't pass until about Copernicus in 1500s when this really started to take shape. So the reason that some of the pseudo-truthers, so to speak, or just mainstream sheeple don't want this to get out and say that it's a distraction is because they don't know how far-reaching the implications of a truth this deep actually surfacing would be. It's like holding a balloon underwater. When you let go, that thing's just going to rush to the surface, the water's going to go flying, and that's what we need. It's exactly what we need. So that's what I'm working towards doing.
Hey man, you ever look at the flat Earth?
I mean, our eyes and experience tell us the Earth is flat and motionless, and everything in the sky revolves around us. But when we cease to believe our own eyes and experience, we have to prostrate ourselves at the feet of these very pseudo-scientists who are blinding us, treat them as experts, astronomical priests who have special knowledge only they can access, like the Hubble telescope. So by brainwashing us of something so gigantic and fundamental, it actually makes every other kind of lesser indoctrination a piece of cake. Earth being the flat, fixed center of the universe around which everything in the heavens revolves gives a special importance and significance, not only to Earth, but to us humans, the most intelligent among the intelligent designers' designs. By turning Earth into a spinning ball thrown around the sun and shot through infinite space from a godless Big Bang, they turn humanity into a random, meaningless, purposeless accident of a blind, dumb universe. So it's like trauma-based mind control, beating the divinity out of us with their mental manipulations. People are always asking, why do they do this? Other than the obvious profit margin motive, NASA being the biggest black budget black hole in existence, sucking in over $30 billion taxpayer money for the fake moon landings alone. Nowadays, hundreds of billions of dollars, and not just NASA, but RASA and all the other fake space organizations around the world, giving CGI images for hundreds of billions of dollars. So this modern atheist, Big Bang, heliocentric, globe Earth, chance evolution paradigm spiritually controls humanity by removing God or any sort of intelligent design and replaces purposeful divine creation with haphazard, random, cosmic coincidence. And so by removing Earth from the motionless center of the universe, these Masons have moved us physically and metaphysically from a place of supreme importance to one of complete nihilistic indifference. If the Earth is the center of the universe, then the ideas of God, creation, and a purpose for human existence are resplendent. But if the Earth is just one of billions of planets revolving around billions of stars and billions of galaxies, then the ideas of God, creation, and a specific purpose for Earth and human existence become highly implausible. So by surreptitiously indoctrinating us into their scientific materialist sun worship, not only do we lose faith in anything beyond the material, we gain absolute faith in materiality, superficiality, status, selfishness, hedonism, and consumerism. If there's no God and everyone's just...
Like, I have a friend who just shared some stuff on Flat Earth on his Facebook, and then people from his hometown, and a guy that's well known in the community, and a former drug dealer and addict. Not to slam him or anything like that. Like, again, like it is what it is. I know a lot of great people that are former drug addicts and or people that struggle with drugs and stuff like that. There's no judgment there, but I'm just like, maybe like don't go and get your scientific knowledge from someone that like I don't even know if he has a I don't even know if he has any post high school. But he's being so rude and he has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. And he's trying to refute things on my friend's page. And so I'm giving him links and trying to assist and stuff like that, and like telling this guy, like, you don't know what you're talking about, because he really doesn't know what he's talking about. And unfortunately, like when you have like popularity and ego and a little bit of intelligence, it can be so dangerous, because like this other guy that he like is being like really rude towards and actually just shutting down what he's trying to share. Like he actually is a really good guy, and he's not as he's not as influential, or whatever you want to call it, anywhere as popular as this guy that's like slamming him and shutting him down on his own freaking page. And I hate it when people do that. So if you don't know what you're talking about, why go through like the effort to try to just like destroy what people are trying to do, especially when what this person is doing is actually to shed light and actually help people in their own lives and provide us with the reality of the world. And so I think this is like, it's the only way to educate people is to share this on our platforms. And like these morons keep on shutting this stuff down, and it's really annoying. And so like I shared some more proof. And is this guy gonna look at it? I even said that I'm like so-and-so. I'm like, you realize this specific person, it's been several months that you've been posting stuff. He's never going to look at anything that you share clearly. Because if he would have looked at anything that he's shared so far, he would have actually considered stuff and like followed through to look at more, stuff and go down the rabbit hole and spend, like the next like 20 years like looking at this stuff. And he clearly hasn't. And I'm glad that someone had mentioned Rob Skiba, because he was actually a pastor before he passed away, and he would be another good person like for arguments against Greg Locke, who's another pastor who's saying that he's a globie and that flat earthers are ignorant and stupid and all this other stuff. But like Rob Skiba, like incredibly religious, really decent human being, and absolutely a flat earther. And he brought biblical references into his studies. And so I can share a little bit of that as well, but I'm already running way over time. And I really think this is important, and it's almost over. So
an accident, and all that really matters is me, me, me. So they've turned Madonna, the mother of God, into the material girl living in a material world. Their rich, powerful corporations with their slick sun cult logos sell us idols to worship, slowly taking over the world while we tacitly believe their science, vote for their politicians, buy their products, listen to their music, watch their movies, all sacrificing our souls at the altar of materialism.
I show you like it.
Yeah. So very interesting. Eric Dubay, like there's some things that like we just don't have the same views on, and that it is what it is. I still really like admire him. I think that he's very incredibly like smart and very healthy and fit and active. I'm just like, I'm not really sold on like the whole veganism thing. I absolutely believe that there should be proteins in our diet and meat and not veganism. And so I just wanted to share a little bit of Rob Skiba, some of his work. And I don't know how much of this will play. I have been able to go over time several times before, so I'm hoping I can do it again. It's this one. And the title is The Genesis Revelation, Part 1, The Biblical Flat Earth. I already liked it, so I might have watched it before, but like not really. And so this is Rob Skiba. Again, he's passed away.
Cool. So yeah, I was a missionary for 6.5 years, and then in 2009,
he's a veteran too.
The Lord started to put a call in my life to leave what I was doing in the International Missions Organization to, of all things, start talking about aliens, UFOs, Nephilim, and weird and crazy stuff like that. Of course, my family thought I was completely insane, and a lot of my fellow believers did as well. What are you doing? I have always had the gift of evangelism. It's never been a problem for me to share my faith and see good results from it. And I had a pretty decent-sized fruit basket, I would say, up until 2009. And then when I started talking about aliens, UFOs, Nephilim, and all that kind of stuff, I was amazed at the exponential increase in my fruit basket. Because some of the things that we're going to talk about this weekend are actually roadblocks that atheists and agnostics have to accepting our view of God. I don't know about you, but throughout the Old Testament, I didn't get very far into the Torah and even other places in the Old Testament where I'd have to close the book because it didn't make sense to me. When we get to the New Testament, we see that Jesus is having this conversation with Philip, and Philip says, "Show us the Father, and it'll be sufficient." And Philip, Jesus says, "Philip, if you've seen me, you've seen my Father." Well, that never computed in my head because Yeshua is this amazing guy. He's loving publicans and sinners. He's hanging out with the only people he's judgmental towards are the religious people. He's this amazing, loving guy, but yet there's his Father. Kill the women, kill the children, kill the animals, wipe out everything throughout the Old Testament. And it never computed in my head. And so we're going to talk about some of that here this weekend, because when you understand what's really going on in Genesis chapter 6, Steve Quayle is fond of saying that it's the Rosetta Stone for understanding the rest of Scripture. And I have to agree with him now that I do understand it. And so that's one thing. And the more I got into that type of research, the more fruit I started to see come in, because it broke down the walls and barriers that a lot of people who become atheists and agnostics put up. The other thing that I found in dealing with atheists and agnostics is, believe it or not, many of them know the Bible better than most Christians do. And they have well, what about this? What about that? And most Christians don't have a clue how to answer it because they don't know what they're talking about. So we're going to address some of those,
including Pastor Locke,
things here this weekend. Here's the agenda. At least, man plans, God laughs. So we'll kind of see what happens. But this is we're getting feedback from something. Or I'm getting signals here. Do what? This?
Nope. The small, the two in red and white.
This one?
Yeah.
There we go. We can get all the technical problems out of the way here. So we're going to start with part 1. Can we trust Genesis? Part 2 is what I call the Yahuwah Triangle: Adam, Abraham, and the Garden of Eden. How many of you were here for the last time that I spoke? What was it? 6, 8 months ago, something like that? Last year? July. It was July. How many of you were not here when I spoke in July? Okay, well, a little over half, it looks like. So for some of you, it'll be a review of what we covered last time. For the rest of you, it'll be some new material. When it comes to the Tetragrammaton, Yod He Vav He, I am not at all dogmatic about how you pronounce it, because I think that there's a lot of a good case can be made for a lot of the different pronunciations people use. Yahweh is one of the most popular ones. King James says Jehovah. Some say Yahovah because there was no J. Some say Yahovah because there's no V. I eventually landed on Yahuwah, mainly because of the pronunciation of the names of the prophets, where you have a number of prophets who have the name of God incorporated into their name, like Yeremiah, Jeremiah, Eliyahu, Elijah. And when the different names that incorporated the name of God into their name, they pronounced it with Yahu. So again, I'm not dogmatic. I'm not a sacred namer or anything like that. It's the name that I have landed on. I've gone through all of them. There were times when I used Yahweh, times when I used Jehovah. I'm on Yahuwah now, but hopefully this is not a bone of contention. I don't think we need to be fighting over something like that. We're doing the best we can with consonants, So the third presentation is called The Seed War Begins, and that's going to incorporate these 3 bullet points: the Genesis 6 experiment, the pre-flood return of the Nephilim. Most people never heard of that. And of course, the post-flood return of the Nephilim. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about Babylon rising, and the first shall be last. And part 5, the Archon invasion, the mark of the beast, and the modern return of the Nephilim. Now, of course, just looking at these titles, I can already imagine that in an audience this size, I'm going to have 3 responses here. Some of you are going to just say, well, isn't that interesting? Never heard that before. Okay, cool. Some of you are going to suggest that I buy stock in tinfoil, and you're going to think I'm completely insane, out of my mind. Why did we even drive however long you drove to get here? And then there's going to be a third group that's going to search and see if these things be true. That is my hope. I'm not here to try to convince you of anything. I don't want to convince you of anything. I want to share some things with you that hopefully you will take notes and think about and consider, because I really do believe that condemnation before investigation is the height of ignorance. So if you condemn before hearing the whole thing and start throwing rocks at me, I'm going to accuse you of throwing rocks from the top of Mount Ignorance. All right? Hear the whole thing and then decide. Search and see if these things be true. So with that said, I'm going to tell you up front, do not believe a thing I say. All right? Just don't believe me. We see Paul says in 1 Thessalonians 5:21 to prove or test all things. Hold fast, which is that which is good. All right? Prove it, test it for yourself. I'm just going to share what I feel I've been learning along my journey. And along the lines of what the condemnation before investigation, we see that King Solomon said, he that answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and a shame unto him. Aristotle said, it is the mark of an educated man to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. And the longer version of the condemnation before investigation was by Herbert Spencer. There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is a proof against all argument, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is condemnation before investigation. Now, whatever we may think of these 3 men and what they have done in their life, that's irrelevant in my mind right now. I agree with these 3 statements that these 3 individuals said. So with that, I'm going to ask you a few questions before we begin. Can we agree on these 2 core essentials? That Yeshua is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes up to the Father except through him. Can we agree on that? Can we agree that we are saved by grace through faith and that not of yourselves, it is a gift of God? It is not of works. We agree on that. Okay, we're off to a good start. Can we agree on this? All scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. For the prophecy came not in old time by the will of man, but holy men of God spake as they were moved by the Holy Ghost. Can we agree on this? Very good. So with that said, then I believe that the scriptures in the Bible were inspired by the Holy Spirit and written by men. Therefore, it is our source for truth, and we can take it literally. And when I say we can take it literally, by that I mean it is understood that the Bible does, in several cases, talk in metaphorical terms and symbolic terms and allegorical terms, parables, right? So in that sense, we can take it literally that the author is talking in a metaphor or talking in a parable, right? So it's my position that the Bible should be taken literally, except for when it tells you not to. Behold, a parable. Oh, okay. I'm going to think about a parable, right? Hey, John, you know that weird freaky beast you just looked at? Here's what it means. Oh, okay, it's a symbol. We clear on that? So would you all agree that we can take the Bible literally within those parameters? Anybody disagree? Okay, then we're going to have some fun. Part 1, can we trust Genesis? Why would I even ask that question? Well, this is my 7th year of doing Torah cycle readings, where we go through the Torah in a year. We're now in the beginning of our 7th year going through it. And it was probably about the 2nd or 3rd, I want to say it was the 2nd cycle, that my wife said to me one day, she said, honey, why don't we read both ends of the Bible toward the middle? Read Genesis and Revelation and Exodus and Jude and sort of kind of work our way toward the middle. I thought, well, I've done a lot of one-year Bible plans before. That's a unique idea. I've never thought of anything like, okay, yeah, sure. Well, we didn't get very far into doing that when I very quickly realized that Revelation is just an amped up repeat of Exodus. In fact, I put together these Torah study workbook guides, and in the introduction of the Exodus workbook, I put together a chart right in the very beginning of the introduction that shows the parallels of the plagues of Exodus with the plagues in judgments given in the book of Revelation. So I'm like, wow, that's just absolutely. What's interesting about this, especially if you're King James only type, I face the deep. The dry land appeared out of the face of the deep in Genesis. So we get more detail here from these various authors, and there are others. I just didn't have the ability to fit them all on one slide right here, but these are really good to get us started. More definition as to how that happened. Job actually predates Genesis. Job was written before Genesis. In Job 38, he talks about the laying of foundations. The earth was laid out with foundations. We see that when that was happening in verse 7, the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Please note, the sons of God in this context are angels, not the sons of Seth. Keep that in mind as we progress into Genesis chapter 6, because this is the understanding we need to have of the phrase, the sons of God. We see in 1 Samuel 2:8 that the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he has set the world upon them. The world's sitting on pillars. The foundations were discovered. We got pillars and foundations. It's all through the Old Testament. Psalm 102:25. Of old, thou hast laid the foundation of the earth. Proverbs 8:27. When he established the heavens, I was there. When he inscribed a circle on the face of the deep, the dry land appeared out of the face of the deep in Genesis. So we get more detail here from these various authors, and there are others. I just didn't have the ability to fit them all in one slide right here, but these are really good to get us started. When we see that the dry land appeared as a result of Yahuwah inscribing a circle on the face of the deep, look up the Hebrew word for inscribe. We see that the Hebrew word is chakak, or kalkak, however you pronounce it, I'm not sure. But basically it means to engrave or to carve something into something else, as if chiseling into like the stone for like the Ten Commandments. Please note, you cannot carve a ball into stone. However, you can inscribe a circle into stone, which is what the text says. The word circle is the word shug, which means circle. When we continue to look at this, we see that Isaiah is one of the last authors to write in this regard. A lot of people, when they're describing the earth, want to go to Isaiah 40:22, but you have to realize Isaiah is building upon all the people who had written before him, like Job and like David and like Solomon and like Moses. So when we get to Isaiah 40:22, which is a verse I have used myself to describe the earth, it says, "It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth." Well, I took Hebrew 101 twice, so that should give you an indication of my aptitude for learning Hebrew. And some may say I don't even have that great a handle on English. Whatever the case may be, language 101, words mean things. And what's interesting about this, especially if you're a King James only type, Isaiah knew the difference between ball and a circle. In Isaiah 22:18, he talks about a ball. The Hebrew word used there is dur, ball. He chose a different word when he described the earth, and staying consistent with the other authors who came before him in that regard. So Isaiah clearly knew the difference. The King James translators knew the difference. The question is, do we know the difference? Google helps you. If you want to Google ball or Google circle, you might get images such as this. So some say when God looked down on the earth, he saw a circle. Well, if he's looking down from the north, you don't get a circle. The only time you get a circle is if you're either sitting on the sun or directly in between the sun and the earth. If you're looking from any other direction, you get something like that when you're looking down. So I'm just going to put this out there for consideration. I'm not telling you what I believe. I am just putting this out there for consideration. This is a ball. This is a circle. Take with it whatever you want. Here's what really got me messed up in all this. Why am I even talking about this stuff? Because I believe, as all you guys indicated, that we should take the Bible literally. Well, the problem is when I started to do that with regard to this particular subject, I got myself in a lot of trouble. And some of you know what I'm talking about if you've been following my YouTube channel and Facebook page. This one really got to me, though, is when we get to the fourth day and he talks about the creation of the sun, moon, and stars. And it says in 3 places that he put them in the firmament. Now, I used to teach the same thing that is taught by Kent Hovind and Karl Baugh and others, that the firmament was a canopy, an ice canopy that surrounded the earth. And it's a great theory. And that, so the theory goes, something impacted it probably, and the firmament disintegrated. Windows of heaven, as it were, opened up, and the canopy disintegrated over a period of 40 days, 40 nights, and it rained down on the earth. Great theory. Pretty awesome. There's a couple problems with it, though. Number one, we have Psalm 148, verse 4, says in a post-flood context, "Praise him, ye heavens of heavens, and ye waters that be," at the time of David, "above the heavens." There's still water up there. Number one. But this is the bigger problem. When you look up the Hebrew there, you see in the red, it's Berekia. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. The point is there's a letter bait preceding the Hebrew word. I learned this much in Hebrew 101, taking it twice, that when a word is preceded with the prefix of bait, it means in, not outside and around, which is what the Kent Hovind Karl Baugh thesis requires. The earth surrounded in a firmament and the sun, moon, and stars outside of it. So I saw a video Kent Hovind did on the 2 firmaments. And he acknowledged that this is a problem. So he did a whole video talking about, well, the first one was destroyed, but there's one on the outside perimeter of the universe, whatever that means. And I'm like, dude, book, chapter, verse on that, man.
I can't prove this at all. Here's the Hovind theory. When God first made the earth, there was earth and space. Then in day 2, he put a crystalline canopy above the atmosphere and where Adam and Eve lived and the birds fly, maybe 10 miles up, wild guess. And he must have put a second crystalline firmament beyond the stars. Nobody knows where does the universe end? And what's on the other side? I don't know. But it says the waters that be above the heavens. There are 2, in answer to the legitimate criticism that the birds fly in the firmament and the stars are in the firmament, there may be 2 crystalline canopies and 2 firmaments. Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, he was caught up to the 3rd heaven. Hovind theory would be the first heaven is the atmosphere that we're breathing up. Maybe it used to be maybe 10 miles thick, and now it's expanded out to 50 or 60 miles. Who cares? It used to have a atmosphere. I'm going to pick a number and say 10 miles thick, a layer of ice, maybe 3 fingers thick, like Josephus and the Jews taught, have always taught. Then stars with bazillions of stars in it going who knows how far, and then another crystalline firmament. And beyond that, I don't know. The call was caught up to the third heaven. So the first heaven would be where the birds fly, the second heaven where the stars are, and the third heaven where God lives. The best I can figure out.
I love Ken Hovind. I consider him a brother. He is largely responsible for the problems I'm having right now because he came through my little Baptist church when I was in my late teens, early 20s, did his creation week-long seminar, Creation versus Evolution. I got his 6 VHS set. Remember VHS back in the day? It's like 12 hours of Ken Hovind creation stuff. I dubbed it all to audio cassette, would listen to it religiously in my car till I practically had it memorized and would teach it myself. I loved all that stuff. And he's the one that taught me, he and others, that this is our source for truth. And of course, he's King James only. This is our source for truth, and we can take it literally. Okay, brother, that's what I'm trying to do. And we're running into problems with that idea of the firmament being an ice canopy. If you take it literally, from Genesis to Revelation, the earth is consistently described by Holy Spirit-inspired authors as something like this, where you basically end up with a fixed, not moving, spinning, or orbiting earth that is circular with edges, and it has corners, pillars, foundations, etc. And it's under a dome within which the sun, moon, and stars were placed on day 4. Now, I created this model just trying to take the Bible literally. I'm going, okay, if I just read the text for what it says, and I didn't have any preconceived notions in my mind reading the text, what would I come up with? And that's what I came up with. Something set on foundations, circular, carved, in a circle, with a dome within which the sun, moon, and stars were placed. And it seemed to fit all the descriptions that I could see, like Isaiah 66:1, etc. And when I put this drawing out on the internet, somebody sent me this picture of a footstool. And I'm going, wow, that looked almost exactly like the depiction that I came up with just going through the various descriptions. Now, that's the inside of a bigger structure as I put more descriptives to the model, where I believe it's something along these lines, again, taking the scriptures literally, where there are other scriptures that talks about God walking on the circle of heaven. So I've got a circular platform over the dome, which would serve like as a footstool. His throne is up there on the top. And down below is this thing that's circular with a dome set on pillars. Okay, let's go a little crazier here. What about Job 26:7? He stretches out the north over the empty space and place and hangeth the earth on nothing. See? Aha! Job proves the earth is hanging in space. I've used that scripture myself numerous times. See? That proves it. The earth's hanging in space. Well, the problem is Job had a few things to say even prior to Job 26. In Job 9:6, he acknowledges the pillars of the earth. We see in Job 38, where he's talking about the foundations and all that stuff and laying the foundation. Other authors in 1 Samuel, we see the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he has set the world upon the pillars. Huh. So could it be then that Job's not contradicting himself or others, but there's another way of looking at this? I think Job is confirming that the earth is hanging on no thing. It is not hanging on or from anything. In other words, all through scriptures, we see over and over again that it is set on pillars.
Because it's an electrical, magnetic, multidimensional reality that's being projected via toroidal fields and hyperboloids.
So if I said to you, I'm in want for nothing, you would understand, well, Rob doesn't need anything.
Check out Ken Wheeler.
Right? Well, I think that's in the context of what Job himself has said in chapter 9, as well as in 38, as well as other scriptures, that he's saying the earth's not hanging on anything because all the authors are telling you it's set on pillars, it's on foundations. Now let's revisit what I started with, the 3 responses. Let's do a little checkup on you. What? Are you out of your mind? I can see the progression. I'm not oblivious to it. Go buy stock in tinfoil, dude. You're a stupid idiot. Okay. What did I say? Search and see if these things be true. Don't believe me. I'm just reading scripture to you up here. Remember? Prove and test all things. Keep doing it. Let's go. How many of you have heard of this game, Whisper Down the Lane? Right? We've all heard it. We played it as a kid, right? Who is most likely to have the truth? The one closest or the one farthest away from the original source of information? All right. So if we imagine these 6 individuals here as 6,000 years of human history, the problem is when you go to the one closest to the source material, all through the ancient world, they're depicting the earth like this. They're all doing it. Not just the Hebrews, the Sumerians.
So this shell or shoal, however you want to pronounce it, this is possibly petroleum, what we're calling fossil fuels. This has nothing to do with biofuels, like none of that stuff is petroleum. It's the second most abundant fluid in the world next to water, and it's accessible by drilling down and getting it.
The Babylonians, even the Greeks.
And that's why there's shell gas stations. And you can drill underwater is like the best way of getting it. And like nothing lived or inhabited like these great distances underground where we're only Anyway.
Greeks until about 200 BC or so, the Egyptians, all of them had this worldview of the cosmos. This is another graphic somebody did depicting the various verses, and these aren't even all the verses, but the various verses that support this idea or at least indicate this idea. Now, I produced a video some of you may have seen a while back called Flat Earth, a Doctor and the Village Idiot. And I'm the village idiot in that story. And in that story, I was saying, okay, when I started doing this and posting videos and showing this stuff, of course, everybody thought I was an idiot, lost my mind, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then I found a highly respected individual, Dr. Michael Heiser. Some of you may know him. He's a Semitic language expert. He's the go-to guy everybody usually goes to when they think I'm crazy. Skiba says this, what do you say? But what was interesting is in his video, he does a whole 25-minute long presentation, about 20, 25 minutes or so, where he goes through the scriptures line by line, and he starts, it says, if we take the scriptures literally, this is what you end up with. And he's on staff at Logos Bible Software, which is staffed by a lot of very intelligent people with letters after their name. And they acknowledge in this very expensive software.
So there's areas where it's more accessible, where you can get to it like close to this. And then you can, which is why even in Canada, there's places where you can like currently access it, like Alberta, and other places where we can't. And why is this? We need to look at this.
One of the premier software, Bible study softwares that you can buy on the market today. They have this graphic right here, created by Logos Bible Software, showing that if you take a literal view of the scriptures, this was the Hebraic concept of the universe. So apparently, I've now earned the reputation as the Facebook village idiot these days. And according to the internet talk show, some people tell me that they're mocking me on various radio talk shows and stuff like that, bringing my name up. And of course, the wildly active gossip mill is chiming in as well. And about the time that I was becoming aware of how much my name is drugged too much, I found an article written by Dr. Michael Heiser. It was written about 3 years ago. In the article, he wrote, literal creationists are actually only selective literalists, or as I would call them, inconsistent literalists. If one was truly consistent in interpreting the creation description of Genesis 1 at face value, along with other creation descriptions in both testaments, you'd come out with a round, flat earth, complete with solid dome over the earth, and earth supported by pillars with Sheol underneath, etc. But creationists who claim the literal mantle don't do that, since the results are clearly non-scientific. My view, this is Dr. Michael Heiser now, as readers know, is that we ought to simply let the text say what it says and let it be what it is. It was God's choice to prompt people living millennia ago to produce this thing we call the Bible. And so we dishonor it if we impose our own interpretive context on it. Our modern evangelical contexts are alien to the Bible. Frankly, any context other than the context in which the biblical writers were moved to write is foreign to the Bible. So who's the literalist now? He says. I've pointed out this inconsistency before, for example, my online lecture about Genesis and its pre-scientific cosmology. What Genesis describes is consistent with all other ancient Near Eastern creation models and shares the vocabulary and motifs of those other pre-scientific cosmologies. That's Dr. Michael Heiser. Now, if you want to get to know who this guy is, you can check him out on logos.com. You go to logos.com for Logos Bible Software, logos.com/academic/bio/Heiser. And you'll see he earned his PhD in Hebrew Bible and Semitic languages at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Before going to UW-Madison, Mike earned an MA in ancient history from the University of Pennsylvania. Major fields were ancient Israel and Egyptology, and another MA from the University of Wisconsin-Madison Hebrew Studies. He also attended Dallas Theological Seminary. Mike's undergraduate degree is from Bob Jones University, but he also attended Bible college for 3 years. Mike's dissertation was entitled The Divine Council in Late Canonical and Non-Canonical Second Temple Jewish Literature. The dissertation sought to discern the ancient Canaanite and Israelite roots of Jewish binitarian monotheism and the early church's high Christology. Because of his coursework, Mike can do translation work in roughly a dozen ancient languages, among them Biblical Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and Ugaritic cuneiform. He has also studied Akkadian and Sumerian independently. Okay, so I mean, he's got more to that bio. I mean, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4 more paragraphs you can read on the guy. He's a highly educated individual. Okay, he's a biblical scholar. He's a Semitic language expert with letters after his name. He's like the go-to guy for ancient Near Eastern languages and cultural contexts that nearly everyone around here in the internet community, they all like to go run to this guy for validation of biblical Hebrew and Greek concepts. And yet, he has said exactly what I've been saying regarding the cosmology of the ancient world, even though I've never consulted anything that he's ever written on this issue until just recently. But if you don't want to listen to the village idiot, then at least listen to Dr. Michael Heiser. And welcome back to the Revolutionary Radio Project. I am your host, Rob Skiba, otherwise known as the Village Idiot. Right before the break, I was talking about Dr. Michael Heiser, super smart, brilliant guy who knows everything about the ancient Near East. He was saying exactly what I've been saying regarding the biblical cosmology. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to play some clips from a online lecture that he has posted on Vimeo. It was dated September 29th, 2010. And he went through many, if not the exact same scriptures that I went through in the previous broadcast, where I was going through the Bible, showing you all the various verses that support a stationary, flat, enclosed earth under a dome, set on pillars, etc. Right? So here is some clips from his online lecture.
The Old Testament shares terms and ideas with the ancient Near Eastern pagans. And we talked a little bit about this last week. This should not be a surprise because there are similarities between the conception of how the world that we experience was made that are shared with Israel's neighbors. We see these terms as metaphorical, the terms that I'm going to cover tonight. We look at them, you know, when the Old Testament says something like that the sky is supported by pillars. Oh, that's just metaphorical. It's just poetic. To us it is, and you know why? Because we have a scientific worldview. That's why. They didn't. They were serious. No ancient person ever scaled a mountain. Do you realize that? Like the tall mountains? Because it takes oxygen, they freeze, and all this kind of special equipment. There's no record that any of them ever did it. Okay, it wasn't until the 15th century that we have, you know, the whole issue resolved of can you sail this way and come out the other, you know, the whole idea about the earth being a globe and all that kind of stuff, that was debated up into the 15th century. We look at that and go, oh, you know, it's just poetic. It is to us. But what I'm going to say is, again, back to my introduction, if you take it literally, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. They were serious about it. All these concepts and even some of the terms are part of ancient Near Eastern cosmology. In other words, what I'll show you tonight, the division of the world, what the world looks like in Israelite cosmology, you can find the same descriptions anywhere else. Egypt, Mesopotamia, you know, ancient Syria, the Hittites, whatever. Because this was a common worldview. This is what it would look like. I didn't make this graphic, which is why it looks cool. Okay. Somebody gave this to me because they hated, honestly, at Western, they hated the one I used, and so they gave me this. This is a three-tiered cosmology. There's God. We're going to see it in the verses I'll show you that God lives above the vault of heaven, the firmament. And in the firmament, you have windows and doors, and you have the earth. We're going to see verses that talk about the ends of the round, flat earth here. Underneath is Sheol. Sheol can be both the grave, and it can also be the underworld. Okay, it's not quite hell, but it's sort of like hell. We can talk a little bit about it. And then underneath that, we have the great deep. These are all scriptural terms that are on this map. This is what an Israelite, an Egyptian would have had different terms, but the same three-tiered level, same with the Mesopotamians. Now they have, theologically, they have dramatically different views of what's going on here. Not just who made it, but what's going on. The views of afterlife, the value of humanity. I mean, it's dramatically different. And I've made the comment before, Genesis is about theological messaging. And there are some dramatic differences in what Israel is saying, the Bible is saying, and anything else. So let's take a look at the parts. Waters above and below the heavens. Genesis 1:6, God said, let there be an expanse. Some translations have firmament. It's rakiach in Hebrew. In the midst of the waters. And let it separate the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse, the rakiach, and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And what was that expanse called? Heaven. The heavens, the sky, Shemayim in Hebrew. So you have here the sky. And you have waters above the sky, and of course you've got waters below down here, but then you have, you know, the atmospheric heavens as well. Psalm 148 mentions the waters that are above the heavens. That's after the flood. Did you catch that? Because a lot of people want to say, oh, the waters above, they went away with the flood. See, the firmament was this canopy thing, and it was there, and then the flood, it just went away. No, it wasn't. According to the psalmist, he's still referring to it. Proverbs 8, when he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep. Isn't that interesting? We'll get to that. Circle on the face of the deep. When he made firm the skies above. Made firm is amatz in Hebrew. It is the same verb for letting a tree grow firm, hard. Ancient cosmology across the board believed that the sky was this dome over the earth, and it was solid. Kind of like the Truman Show. Okay? They believe that the stars were affixed to it. Some of the stars never moved, but other ones did. And the ones that did, this is why the word stars is attributed to the sons of God and to angels in biblical literature. They believed that the stars were animate beings. They were really divine beings, and then they'd come to earth as angels, but they lived up there. And those are the ones that moved. Why? Because movement shows what? If something moves, it's alive. Okay? Again, they can't take a rocket and go up and check it out. They believe that this is there's a solid expanse over them. Another passage, Job 37, verse 18. Can you, like him, speaking of Job, drawing the dramatically poor comparison of God and Job, or so who's going to win there, but can you, like him, spread out the skies hard, kazakh, hard as cast metal, mutzak, as a metal mirror. Mutzak is the same word used in the casting of the laver, the tabernacle where they would wash. It's solid. It's also the same terminology used for flint rock. Again, these passages point to the belief that there's a dome, the sky's a dome, and it's solid. And God lives above it, we live below it. Job 22, did I skip one? No, I didn't. But you say, what does God know? Can he judge through the deep darkness? Thick clouds veil him so that he does not see, and he walks on the vault of heaven. That's where God lives. It's his address. And before we think, oh, that's quaint, how cute. We think that, don't we? If a little child would ask you, where does God live? Up there. Is there something wrong with that answer? Use it, because there's a sense that God lives off planet. Why? Because he created the earth for us. He doesn't need it. He's independent of it. He transcends it. That's all it is. It's very normal. Amos 9:6, he builds his upper chambers in the heavens and founds his vault upon the earth, the vault upon the earth, who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the surface of the earth. The Lord is his name. And Psalm 29, the Lord sits enthroned over the flood. Again, I told you I'm going to be a flaming literalist tonight. I'm going to take them absolutely at their word. The vault of the heavens, pillars and mountains. The pillars of heaven tremble and are astounded at his rebuke. Oh, that's just metaphor and poetry. Yeah, yes, it is. If you ask them, it's like, well, there's that big mountain thing. I mean, that's holding up the sky. Duh. If you don't believe it, go find. I mean, how are you going to find out any different? Obviously we can, but the means to do that isn't with them. 2 Samuel 28, the earth reeled and rocked, the foundations of the heavens trembled and quaked because God was angry. Windows and doors, and that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed. Psalm 78, yet he commanded the skies above and opened the doors of heaven. Again, familiar phrases. Pillars under the earth, supporting the earth. And look at the language. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. You betcha. It's not Marduk. It's not that silly Ta in Egypt. It's Yahweh who did that. Isn't that amazing? I mean, an Israelite would want you to marvel. You would think you're insane if you didn't. Either that or a pagan. Job 38:4. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? He set the earth on its foundations so that it should never be moved. To him who spread out the earth above the waters. Again, think of the circle with the earth in the middle. For his steadfast love endures forever. Now, that is a very brief overview of Old Testament cosmology. But the message I want you to take away again is Genesis is about theological messaging. And if we look at Genesis this way, it doesn't matter that Genesis is, and the rest of the Bible is littered with this kind of cosmological language because God didn't bother to change the culture. He could have if he wanted to. He didn't care. If he had cared, he would have done it. The only other conclusion is that he couldn't, and then you have a problem with omnipotence. God doesn't care. I'm coming to these people at this time, in this place. It's second millennium BC. They don't know it's BC yet because Jesus hasn't come. It's a long time, okay, way, 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 way back. And I'm going to give them a message, and they're going to do the best they can under my influence to express it. I'm going to watch as they write. If they goof up, I'm going to send somebody along. Go fix that. They didn't quite get it right. Somebody will come along and clean that up a little bit. When it gets done with the process, God can look at this thing we call the Bible and say, good job. It's pretty good. I'm satisfied with that. But all that content is fixed in a particular worldview that we don't have. We have to let it be what it is. And let God's decision to do it that way settle with us. My challenge to you is try it. If you do that, you don't need to justify it to science. They need to justify why they're criticizing it for not being what it was never intended to be. And that would be an interesting conversation. Don't accept that the way they articulate the debate.
All right, that's where I'll end that. So clearly, Dr. Michael Heiser fully acknowledges that the Bible absolutely argues in favor of a still flat circular earth with a dome over it. I mean, let that sink in, guys. Go read this guy's bio. A Semitic language expert acknowledges that the Hebrews had the same cosmology as the ancient Near East, which was just the same way it's depicted in the Logos Bible software picture. Now, all the stuff that I've been referring to in this broadcast so far came as a result of me trying to confirm that Logos actually made that picture, because I've used that picture quite a bit, and you know, people get creative with Photoshop sometimes, so I wanted to make sure that was a legitimate image created by Logos Bible software, which is a highly respected Bible tool software program. So as I'm searching to confirm that that was in fact created by Logos Bible software, I'm finding all these articles that I've been referring to in this broadcast so far, and then I found this video of Michael Heiser saying that. Now, I said it, and people mocked me, and they dismissed it, and they stated that the whole biblical flat earth thing, you know, that was just a myth that showed up a couple hundred years ago to make Christians look stupid. No, guys, it was the dominant view of the ancient world. Face it, that's what it was until about 1,500 years ago. And this is confirmed again by a highly educated intellectual who's one of the big content contributors to Logos Bible software. Okay, so again, if you don't want to believe me, the village idiot, then believe him. Now, that said, he was, you heard him in the previous session there say that Genesis is about theological messaging. And he's basically making the case that the Bible is just there to give us theology, you know, how to understand our relationship with God. Well, hey, that's true. But the creator of the cosmos told several authors, and he read a bunch of them, and I put a whole bunch more in the stuff that I wrote long before I ever read any of his stuff. You know, the Holy Spirit inspired these guys to describe the earth a very specific way. You know, Mike says, well, you know, God never felt the need to correct them in their apparent wrong interpretation or understanding. Well, wait a minute. Why would God have to correct them? He's the one that inspired them to write it in the first place. He'd have to correct himself. He's the one that told them to write it that way. This was the Hebraic concept of the universe, and they were not alone. Like I said, there are many, many other cultures that believe the same thing. So looking at our whisper down the line, we have the guys toward the source material saying, we are on a circular, still flat earth set on pillars under a dome, within which are the sun, moon, and stars.
Very nice.
We get to the end of the line where we are today, and I heard we live on a spinning heliocentric ball in an ever-expanding universe. Huh. Which one is it anyway? If you read the textbooks will tell you that we are on an oblate spheroid. You got this guy right here saying, no, the Earth is really pear-shaped. Neil deGrasse Tyson says the Earth is pear-shaped. Then, of course, everything NASA puts out shows us pictures time and time again of a perfect sphere. And then we have the Bible over here saying, well, you live in a snow globe. So, which one is it? I'm asking the question because I'm asking the question. Again, Zach, with all due respect, put out a video declaring in as much that I'm an idiot. But Zach and I had conversations before this happened, so it's all cool. We're still buddies. But when he contacted me, he said, okay, dude, I just got to tell you, I'm going to put out a video, and I'm going to tell you what it's about. You know, I don't want you to be mad or anything. I'm like, no, dude, that's totally cool. I'm still asking questions myself. I said, of course, you may realize that I'm going to have to give a rebuttal to your video, which you know what I have not done yet because I simply didn't have time. And probably that's a good thing, because if I did put out a rebuttal video, he would have to put out a rebuttal video, and then I'd have to put out, and we would never get anywhere ever. In a way, this presentation may be that rebuttal, but yeah, you know, when you look through the text, I mean, it is a mind bender. And he did say in his video, Rob Skiba has all but said he's a flat earther, which is true. I have all but said that I am a flat earther. I have said that I am a zetetic agnostic. A zetetic is a person who proceeds with inquiry and investigation, and an agnostic is somebody who doesn't yet believe you can prove it either way. So that's where I'm at this point. I am struggling with all of those models up there right now, because Paul said, prove all things. And I'm having trouble.
I'm not struggling with the model.
Just trying to prove the snow globe. I'm having trouble proving the ball, because most of our information on the ball relies on these guys. These guys hate
This
God.
is a electromagnetic simulated projected reality that's being projected on a flat, that's being projected on a flat plane of inertia via hyperboloids and toroidal fields. And Ken Wheeler, and there are others, they show a lot of this online now, and it's very interesting. And so I did want to share some stuff from. Oh no, that's Greg. Lock. I'll put it on anyways. So this is the pastor that I shared yesterday. That's like talking shit all about flat earthers and how stupid we are and stuff like that, and how like it's just one quote that he can get from like his Bible, and it'll destroy it, the whole flat Earth, theory, and blow it out of the water. And so even with Rob Skiba, like you can very, very plainly see that there's a lot of Bible references that do discuss a flat stationary Earth.
This is just some simplex magnetic viewing film. What are the geometry of the torus and the hyperboloid? Let's try to explain the space and counter space in simple. I've got a couple chalkboards. You got to get serious when you need 2 miniature chalkboards. Here we can actually take a look at the magnet and put the magnetic viewing film on top of it. Here you can actually see the plane of inertia right here. Here's one pole, here's another pole. Of course, you know how it looks after hundreds and hundreds of videos. Underneath the supercell, a magnet doesn't actually have poles. Well, sure it does. Every magnet has a north pole and a south pole. Well, if it did, it would be located there. And if it were located there, then you could cut this magnet in half and you have a north pole side and a south pole side. But it doesn't work that way because you could cut it a million times if it were possible. And each, of course, slice would have a quote north pole and a quote south pole. What a magnet actually has is the inverse to.
So that's the point too. A magnet has a north pole and a south pole. All right, these are energetic fields utilizing centrifugal and centrifugal and centripetal force.
Counter space, which of course is polarity, which is a 3-dimensional S-curve. In other words, the plane of inertia, which is the inverse of magnetic centrifugal divergence, which of course forms the geometry of this. The toroid is a cross-section of a toroid or a donut shape, and this is of course what the magnetic field looks like, right? It's toroidal. It's a centrifugal.
And the donut, like I think that like in The Simpsons, and like maybe I'm overthinking this, but I think that big pink donut that you see at the beginning of every freaking episode, or a lot of them in the movies, like I think that's like owed to like the shape of like this possible like this toroidal field hyperboloid multidimensional reality.
Divergence, yeah. Centrifugal divergence. This is the geometry of force and motion. And the opposite to that, let me move the magnet out of the way, would be the geometry of increasing inertia and acceleration. So you have the conjugate geometry, sorry if I don't draw this perfectly, on every magnet, which of course is this hyperboloid hourglass shape. This is the geometry of increasing inertia and acceleration. This is towards the plane of inertia, right? You notice it actually makes it.
And that flat plane of inertia, I don't even know if Ken Wheeler's a flat earther or not, honestly, I don't know. But like in that area, in this area here, this flat plane of inertia, this is where this multidimensional, this 3-dimensional Earth plane is being projected.
This interesting cross. And of course, I don't know if you know how much you know about the right-hand rule. And of course, I've got this a little bit messed up now. Let's actually flip the board over here. Here we can actually see the plane of inertia relative to, and it's the lowest pressure mediation or the maximum throw against, use the word throw, the maximum pressure mediation against which the centrifugal divergent magnetic and centripetal convergent increasing inertia and acceleration towards right here, the null point of counter space right here, the plane of inertia right here. This actually sits, here's the dielectric, which is the centripetal, and this is the centrifugal magnetic, this vector and this vector. Okay, right here. We have opposite to the hyperboloid and the torus, and these two are the conjugate geometries of the universe, the hyperboloid, the hourglass shape, and the toroid, or the donut shape. Opposite to those at 45 degrees and 90 degrees to the dielectric, but this is the only place where life exists. Let me actually wipe this out. I don't know if you've actually seen this geometry before, but most of the life on the Earth, you probably heard, exists along the equator. I wait for my chalkboard to dry here. And of course, you heard of a spiral arm galaxy, yeah, plane of inertia, and the equator of the Earth. The tropical zones are basically, 95% of the the Earth's life exists, or we could actually draw the same plane of inertia in 3 dimensions. I don't know if I could actually represent it. Looking down, we actually have the sun, and we have Mercury, Venus, Earth. We actually have this plane of inertia to the Earth, and here's the moon over here. Sits not only along this plane of inertia relative to the sun, but it also sits at a midpoint at a ratio of 1 to be 0, and say like Jupiter would be way out here. I can't draw the chalkboard out that far, which would be phi cubed distance to the sun, and also 2 spiral arm galaxies. So let's actually take a look at this geometry in simplex here. And by the way, you need to become familiar with the right-hand rule. I know this will actually become, even slightly apparent or understandable unless you understand the right-hand rule. Right-hand rule is just simply saying pressure mediation, kind of like saying water flows down the tub in your bathtub when you pull the cork, right? Lowest pressure mediation is the water wants to seek the lowest point. That's the plumber's motto, is that crap flows downhill. I think that's the plumber's motto. Here we actually have increasing inertia and acceleration. Centripetal convergence, this of course is right along the hyperboloid here, increasing inertia and acceleration to the plane of inertia. Everything out here, of course, is space, space, space. These 4 S vectors are, of course, the 4 vectors of the toroid, the torus. If I were to actually draw this out without making the chalkboard too busy, these would be the 4 vectors of space. To say magnetism and to say creates space, and also to say creates time, is one and the same thing. Here we have the actual vectors of counterspace, centripetal convergence, the actual geometry, and it's conjugate geometry of the torus and the hyperboloid. The negative image of a torus is a hyperboloid, and the negative image of a hyperboloid is a torus. We actually have the vectors here of counterspace, but all life exists. You notice that this is 45 degrees, 45 degrees, 45 degrees, 45 degrees, 45 degrees, 45, 45. Yeah, I think I made that simple. The plane of inertia right here. This is the inverse. This is the lowest pressure mediation. In other words, this is the calm from the storm, the shelter from the storm. Trying to make a simple analogy that people can understand. Some places on Earth have really radical, like they're really windy and they're really stormy, and you need to build a shelter, and you want the best place, which would be like in a natural ditch or near a rock cliff, for example, like they have in some places in Ireland, where it's really, really windy. So you don't end up with bad storms and bad winds. This plane of inertia right here is the calm in the storm, analogously, where life exists, and life only exists along the plane of inertia. This is the calm in the storm between the toroidal centrifugal divergence of the magnetic and the centripetal hyperboloidal. Let me just draw out the hyperboloidal here, the hourglass shape. Yeah, I'm just going to draw out that one. Yeah, right here. I think you know what the donut shape is right here. This is the calm in the storm right here, where life exists. And everywhere we find life in the universe, and even on the Earth, and even on the solar system, is right here at the plane of inertia.
Bingo.
It follows the right-hand rule perfectly.
Just like a video game with characters that you play and stuff like that. Like you are playing the character. The character has like other characters possibly that it plays with you, and has like these scripts and these like roles and these missions and whatever. But it was all based off a game that was created by one person or a few people, and you need electricity in order to play the game, right? So like a spark or whatever you want to call it, and then like it's projected on the screen.
This plane of
and then once the game is over, you just get back to your own regular routine, like even after these videos, like I walked the dogs a very long walk, and did some chores, some errands. I went to the gym, meal prep. There's a few things I did, but anyway.
Inertia is the calm in the storm, the lowest pressure mediation between these centrifugal divergent.
I went to the butcher and got meat as well, just because it's raised in a local farm, no steroids, no antibiotics, nothing, and grass-fed and really humanely treated animals.
Magnetic vectors and the centripetal convergent hyperboloidal vectors between the magnetic and the dielectric. And this is the most simplex geometry of the entire universe. It holds true from one end of the universe to the other, and it's this plane of inertia right there, and you can see it. A magnet doesn't actually have poles. Sure it does. Everybody knows that. You're smoking crack. What are you talking about? Of course a magnet has poles. Everybody knows a magnet has a north pole and a south pole. No, what actually defines polarity? Polarity is literally just the centrifugal divergence. It is the vector of space. Right here at the plane of inertia is where life is. This is the opposite of centrifugal divergence and centripetal convergence. This is the calm in the storm. Right here, this plane of inertia, right here, where all life exists. That's not to say you can't live out in the storm somewhere out here, but it's not desirable. Life doesn't actually want to sprout there. It's kind of like throwing seeds out in the middle of the Mojave Desert. You know, they might grow a couple inches in the rainy season, but really life doesn't grow there. You know, it can, but it doesn't flourish there. It doesn't live there. It doesn't want to live there. It's kind of like the same reason you don't see crap growing on the South Pole. You know, you don't see it growing there in Antarctica, do you? There's not much stuff down there that's living, is there? No, there's not. It's kind of a reason for that. Yeah. Kind of the reason why 95% of the Earth's life exists along the plane of inertia that is the Earth. This is the plane of inertia. It's the lowest pressure mediation that's extant between centrifugal divergence and centripetal convergence. It is literally the lowest pressure mediation, or the calm zone.
He's sorry, I shouldn't have cut it off like that, but he has so many great videos. I highly recommend people take a look at his work. I've shared his stuff before as well. I think it would be good to
little insight into the upcoming 4th edition of the, I can actually say, much awaited book, the Uncovering the Missing Secrets of Magnetism, the 4th edition. This is maybe a little Christmas gift for those that were waiting for the book. As I've stated in a prior video, field pressure dynamics are very simple. Mother Nature doesn't do math. The nature of field pressure dynamics is really very simple, but what is magnetism and what defines the magnet is unknown by humanity until now. When some of the greatest minds supposedly were asked, you know, how do magnets quote unquote attract, or how do they repel? The great idiot and fool Richard Feynman squirmed in his chair, and then he gave an analogy of an old woman slipping on the ice, and really dodged and squirmed and wiggled. One of the most despicable videos that I've ever seen in my life. But he's a cult hero in the occult of quantum mechanics, which has quantized the entire universe full of unicorn particles, tachyons and gluons and muons, and Mother Nature is just an insane old lady with a bag of magic unicorn farts and pixie dust. Well, Mother Nature doesn't work that way. She only knows two principles fundamentally: force and motion, inertia and acceleration. That which defines 100% of the empirical, i.e. existential universe, is of course magnetism. That which is the air inside the quote-unquote balloon of the universe, be it from the atomic scale to the macro scale, is of course unquestionably so magnetism. That is certainly not up for debate. And I've told you before, and we'll explain further in greater detail in the 4th edition of the book, and the 5th and the 6th. There's so much material to add that this force divergence is defined by the reciprocating precessional hyperboloid, which superficially sounds rather complicated, but it is no more difficult than a child pulling the drain on a bathtub. It is no more difficult than that, I assure you. That which forms magnetism is a reciprocating precessional hyperboloid, the inverse image of which is the torus. Now, the dielectric and magnetic, as Faraday called dielectricity, he referred to magnetism as the dielectric field. Now, the magnetic field is, of course, the force and motion divergent torus. I've already explained that to you in a prior video. Now you have to look at the inverse image of the torus. Now, the inverse image, now if you don't know what a hyperboloid is, then go ahead and Google it. It basically looks like an hourglass shape. So the inverse, or the hyper-Euclidean geometry of course, Euclidean geometry is spatial geometry, but hyper-Euclidean or trans-Euclidean or hyper-spatial geometry, which is counter space, is the hyperboloid, the inverse image of the torus. This I've already also explained to you. Don't worry, I'm getting to the point here really quickly. at the point at which you'll have hopefully an aha moment, make things really simple, show you that Mother Nature has really got no tricks up her sleeve. She's as simple as more simple, far more simple than you could possibly imagine. So now you understand the force divergence geometry and the trans-Euclidean geometry of the hyperboloid. Now this necessitates precession. As anything like a dog on a chain tied to a stake in the yard, if it's running around, it is always tethered to the point of inertia, the center point. No matter which way you go, it is always a curvilinear motion. There are no straight lines like this naturally. Okay, now this is an unnatural toroidal force divergence if you ever follow these arrows, but I'll get to this in a second when we're looking at quote unquote magnetic repulsion, where this actually is true, but it is not something that Mother Nature ever does. It is a artificial, a synthetic force application that we refer to as magnetic repulsion. But what it is dielectric counteravoidance. It is literally the increasing the pressure of the torus. Because the dielectric counteravoidance or divergent pressure obeys the right-hand rule of magnetic field pressure necessity, which is a torus 90 degrees to the divergent pressure applied, or the hyperboloid perpendicular to the force divergence. Now, what am I talking about? Now, here is Mother Nature's dog on a leash. This is natural magnetic force divergence. It, of course, follows a curvilinear path. Now, this is a linear path along the line of a torus, but it is nevertheless linear. It is curvilinear to the toroidal shape relative to the perspective viewer, but it is unnatural. This, of course, is a magnetic repulsion, but this does not exist in nature under normal circumstances. Mother Nature does not apply pressures counter to pressure mediation. She works exactly like this. And of course, this is the pattern that you can see crosswise underneath the ferrocell. This is the hypertrochoid of the torus, which follows the curvilinear path. Now let's take a look at something specifically, because I know you're a little confused right now, but I'll straighten things up very, very quickly. Let's look at two different things. So you notice these are both the exact same image. It's all I've done over here to the right is rotate the image to the right, and I'm actually demonstrating two different field modalities: magnetic, what you would call magnetic attraction, and over here what you'd incorrectly call magnetic repulsion. But that's not the case. See, now there's no such thing as a radiation or divergence that attracts itself. There's no such thing as radiation, which is attractive. Now, magnetism, of course, is a dielectric field, and it's certainly not radiation, but it is the loss of inertia. It is force divergence. So what do we have here? A magnet.
I do think that radiation stems from magnetism, and that
Magnetism certainly follows the right-hand rule. Now, two magnets accelerating has no different field geometry than does a single magnet, nor do five magnets already together. It is a pressure equalized torus. So let's take a look over here at the left at what you would incorrectly call magnetic acceleration or magnetic attraction. Excuse me. This is dielectric voidance. This is convergent dissipation of force and motion. Now, if you look here, and if you look at this underneath the iron filings, you'd actually see basically these little black lines underneath my red and blue lines here. But it would look like a sphere between the magnet, okay? But what you're actually seeing is a shrinking torus. Let me repeat that. You are seeing a shrinking torus. If you actually look at this cross-sectionally here, what you'll see is a torus that is shrinking. It is actually dissipating force and motion into the trans-Euclidean hyperboloid, which forms a negative image of the torus, okay? This is the actual counterspatial acceleration that is occurring of the shrinking torus between these two accelerating magnets. Now over here we have something unnatural to nature. We actually have this pressure divergence right here. Before getting to that, let's first talk about magnetic acceleration, which is what is incorrectly called magnetic attraction. But it's not attraction. There's no force involved. They naturally accelerate without any force. It is the actual voidance of force, what I've specifically called dielectric voidance. It's the convergent field pressure dissipation that also obeys the right-hand rule of magnetic field pressure necessity, which is a torus parallel to the convergence of acceleration, where no pressure exists, and under acceleration is undergoing entropy to rest inertia. You see, they're actually, the torus is dissipating into the hyperboloid of the negative image of the spatial torus, which is, of course, denotatively.
So this is Ken Wheeler, Theoria Apophasis on YouTube. I'm running over so much time, and so I will leave it at that. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.